701 Grand Seal Immortal Skynet, a brand new law. 701 Grand Seal Immortal Skynet, a brand new law. The phenomenon caused by Feng Sheng forcefully entering this universe was different from the phenomenon caused by Kui Heng's descent. As the entire universe trembled, various stars exploded and star seas shattered. At this moment, the vast starry sky was filled with destruction. It did not look the same as when it was receiving Kui Heng when he descended. Even the phenomena that appeared in the void was incomparably terrifying. Blood-colored rivers crossed the starry skies, as if the entire universe had been slashed with incomparably huge wounds. At the same time, in countless worlds, on countless living stars, there were also special places like the Heaven Realm and Immortal Land. One could see a blood-colored river flowing in the sky. The sky that flowed through the blood-colored river also began to crack inch by inch. Black spatial cracks spread out from the river, causing the entire sky to split into pieces. If one walked among the starry skies of the universe and had a higher perspective, they could even see incomparably huge blood-colored rivers crossing tens of billions of light years and swallowing countless star seas. At this moment, the entire universe seemed to have entered the final moment of destruction. Countless cultivators felt extreme despair in their hearts. They could feel the world wailing, the great Tao wailing, as if the final apocalypse had arrived and everything would be destroyed. At a level that most living beings could not sense, Feng Sheng released an extremely powerful dark yellow light that actually enveloped the outermost layer of the entire universe. If one looked down at this universe from the Chaos Sea, they would be able to see a gigantic dark yellow net completely enveloping this light ball, sealing all possibilities of leaving. This also meant that from this moment on, this universe was in a state where nothing could enter or leave. It was impossible for anything to come out of the interior of this universe, nor could anyone enter from the outside. Unless they had power that was powerful enough to destroy this black-yellow net. However, in reality, it was almost impossible to destroy this black-yellow net. This huge net was a supreme treasure bestowed by Emperor Wu to Feng Sheng, the Grand Seal Immortal Skynet. It could seal any universe. It was impossible for anyone below the Immortal Emperor realm to break through its seal. And existences at the quasi-immortal Emperor realm usually would not face Feng Sheng's attacks. In the past long years, Feng Sheng had used this net to seal off many universes and finally completed his missions perfectly. This time, he had the same plan. In order to completely kill the Heaven's Will that had grasped the power of Heaven Heartmist, the first thing he had to do was seal off this universe to prevent the Heaven's Will from escaping. However, because the principle of this huge net was to attach to the universe's black-yellow membrane and seal it, and there was also a layer of primordial inner world outside the black and yellow membrane, the huge net would only be able to be opened and used after entering the universe. This was also the reason why he chose to attack after entering this universe and not from afar. To ensure that the operation was safe and foolproof. At the same time that Feng Sheng descended, Kui Heng had already brought Venerable Master Ju into the starry sky. Kui Heng was rather happy with the sudden arrival of an invincible immortal king. Previously, through investigating the past of Jun Tian, he had learned that invincible immortal kings could completely destroy a universe with their own strength. They were incomparably powerful. This made him guess that perhaps invincible immortal kings already had strength that was not inferior to the early stage return to Void Realm. However, guesses were only guesses in the end. He had never seen an invincible immortal king attack before, so it was difficult for him to figure out how powerful this realm was. Although Venerable Master Ju in front of him had a cultivation realm equivalent to an invincible immortal king, Kui Heng had yet to ask for relevant information and did not understand anything about invincible immortal kings. Moreover, his understanding of Venerable Master Ju was limited, and he had never seen him attack before. He could not accurately investigate his past. Of course, Venerable Master Ju was considered a friend. Before he could confirm if an invincible immortal king had touched the mysteries of time, Kui Heng would not investigate his past. After all, prying into the past was him taking the initiative to investigate the scenes of the past reflected by the river of time. With his current cultivation of the Eon Light Evasion spell, he could not hide himself in such a situation. If an invincible immortal king had already come into contact with the wonders of time, this act of investigating his past would be discovered. Even if Venerable Master Ju did not say it on the surface, he would definitely be unhappy in his heart. Kui Heng naturally would not lose a friend for no reason and possibly gain another enemy. However, this also made it impossible for him to accurately determine the strength of an invincible immortal king, so it was naturally even more impossible for him to determine the strength of a quasi-immortal emperor or even an immortal emperor. This was a very dangerous situation. Therefore, in Kui Heng's opinion, it was best if he could come into contact with an invincible immortal king first. Through understanding the past of this invincible immortal king, he could pry into the strength of the quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors. This was a relatively safe method. After all, from Juanqian's past experience, invincible immortal kings were powerful, but they were most likely at the early stage return to Void Realm. With his current strength, he could still deal with them. If they could not control something as miraculous as time, they might only be equivalent to the peak soul formation realm. Then, they would be even less of a threat. Of course, when he really had to face an invincible immortal king, he still had to maintain the necessary caution. He could not let his guard down because of this. In order to avoid any accidents, Kui Heng specially called Venerable Master Ju along. With such an expert comparable to an invincible immortal king around, it should be much safer no matter what. However, in Venerable Master Ju's opinion, Kui Heng's actions had another meaning. 702 Grand Seal Immortal Skynet, a brand new law, 2. 702 Grand Seal Immortal Skynet, a brand new law, 2. He thought to himself, to a quasi-immortal emperor, an invincible immortal king is just an ant that can be killed easily. Why did the exalted immortal ask me to follow him? With the cultivation of a quasi-immortal emperor, there's no need to use this to intimidate me, nor is it possible for him to do this just to let me see his strength. I understand. He's probably trying to give me an opportunity. To be able to watch a quasi-immortal emperor attack at a close distance and observe the mysteries of time is a great opportunity for someone like me who is trying to step into the quasi-immortal emperor realm. If my realm is high enough, it's even possible for my cultivation to directly increase because of this. I might even break through on the spot and reach the level of a quasi-immortal emperor. But this is only the first time I've met this senior, and he actually wants to give me such a huge opportunity. What's the purpose? What's the reason? What's his goal? It's just that my words shouldn't be worth a quasi-immortal emperor doing this. However, I'm a member of the Chaos Heaven Assembly after all. Is he expressing goodwill to Chaos Heaven? If that's really the case, that's great. Compared to the primordial world, our Chaos Heaven has always been at a disadvantage in terms of the number of high-end experts. If we can rope in a quasi-immortal emperor, the pressure on our Chaos Heaven will be much less. Kui Heng sensed the changes in Venerable Master Ju's emotions, but he did not pay much attention to him. At this moment, he was focused on observing the phenomenon triggered by the invincible immortal king when he entered this universe. The ordinary origin great Taos are all trembling, and the point of origin is also trembling. This means that the core origin great Tao has also been affected. The laws of the entire universe have entered an extremely tense state. Near this person, many laws have even begun to collapse, and space and time has become a little chaotic. But this chaos was not caused by the divine power of time, but because his body is too huge compared to this universe. This caused a drastic change on the physical level and affected the normal operation of space-time. There were signs of time accelerating or slowing down, but it did not affect the past or the future. From the interaction between this person and this universe, he shouldn't have touched the mysteries of the river of time yet, but his size is indeed enough to compare to me, an early-stage return to Void Cultivator. This seems to be similar to the peak of the soul formation realm. His body is equivalent to a universe, but it lacks the mystical power of time and does not transcend the level of a universe. Through the interaction when he entered this universe, Kui Heng could clearly determine the level of strength of this invincible immortal king and whether he had touched the mysteries of time. I see. Kui Heng looked at the phenomenon that filled the universe and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. This is an invincible immortal king. Now, he had completely figured out what level this invincible immortal king was at. Countless thoughts appeared in Venerable Master Ju's heart when he heard this. He thought to himself, what does this mean? Could it be that he doesn't know the strength of an invincible immortal king? How is this possible? He's already a quasi-immortal emperor. He must have broken through from the realm of an invincible immortal king. How can he not know the strength of an invincible immortal king? Unless he's an existence born with the strength of a quasi-immortal emperor. However, the origin great Tao of this universe is so barren. Normally speaking, it's unlikely for even an immortal king expert to be born. How can a quasi-immortal emperor be born? This caused Venerable Master Ju to fall into deep thought. No matter what, he could not understand what Kuiheng had just said. At this moment, Kuiheng suddenly smiled and said to Venerable Master Ju beside him, Venerable Master, this person is forcefully entering this universe. If the laws of the universe counterattack, will it be his match? Ah! Venerable Master Ju asked curiously, Senior, that person is an invincible immortal king. His body is comparable to a universe. The great Tao laws of this universe are about to collapse. What if this universe has a special suppression law? Kuiheng chuckled. For example, as long as any heaven pass realm experts from the primordial world enter this universe, their realm will directly fall to the peak Tao heaven realm. Venerable Master Ju was clearly a little stunned when he heard this, as if he could not understand Kuiheng's meaning for a moment. After a while, he said in surprise, there can't be such a rule, right? He had never heard of this kind of universe law that specially suppressed heaven pass realm experts. Moreover, even if there was such a law, this barren border universe probably could not effectively suppress immortal kings. But why did this senior suddenly say this? Was there a deeper meaning? Just as Venerable Master Ju was feeling very puzzled, Kuiheng suddenly said, I order this universe to form a new rule. As long as any heaven pass realm experts from the primordial world enter this universe, their realm will directly fall to the peak Tao heaven realm. His voice was not loud, just the volume of his usual words. However, it spread at an extremely fast speed through the power of the origin of life, instantly reaching the ears of every living being in this universe. This naturally included Feng Sheng, who had already descended into this universe. After using the Grand Seal Immortal Skynet to completely seal this universe, he originally planned to immediately look for the heavens will hear. At this moment, he suddenly heard these words, and the expression on his face immediately became incomparably interesting. In the eyes of an invincible immortal king like him, the words just now were too ridiculous. He did not believe a single word. After all, directly setting new laws for a universe was something only a quasi-immortal emperor could do. Moreover, even if a quasi-immortal emperor wanted to set new laws, he had to follow a certain pattern. It was impossible to directly fabricate some laws out of thin air, let alone such ridiculous rules that specially suppressed a certain group. It was almost impossible to successfully create them. Moreover, the primordial world had a close monitoring of the movements of all the quasi-immortal emperors in the boundless chaos sea. After a long time of correction and experimentation, there were almost no oversights in their surveillance. He could confirm that there were no quasi-immortal emperor realm experts in this universe. This was also one of the reasons why Feng Sheng came. As long as it was a living being that had yet to reach the quasi-immortal emperor realm, he was confident in dealing with it. This was his confidence in his strength. However, just as he confidently ignored this voice and was about to find the source, the power in his body actually began to decline rapidly. In the blink of an eye, Feng Sheng realized that the power in his body was inexplicably draining. And it was extremely fast. It was as if a sack had been pierced through, and everything inside was gushing out. What's going on? What's going on? Feng Sheng's heart was instantly in turmoil. A new law has really appeared. A quasi-immortal emperor has taken action. At the same time, he began to circulate the power in his body, trying to resist the strange laws that were weakening his body. In the depths of his heart, he was already roaring in disbelief. Such ridiculous laws actually appeared. Did a quasi-immortal emperor take action? He can actually create such completely unreasonable rules out of thin air? That's not right. The suppression of this law is based on the power of the universe itself, and this universe's body is not even as big as mine. It's impossible for it to completely suppress me. I don't believe that the laws of this universe can suppress me. Does this universe, which is weaker than me, want to weaken me? 703 The real purpose of Emperor Wu. 703 The real purpose of Emperor Wu. The strength of the great Tao laws of the universe was related to the size of the universe itself. This volume was not only about the breadth of space and the thickness of matter, but also the depth of time. Although the progress of some universes that had been expanding since they were born was actually unified, there were actually many universes or worlds that had space and matter fixed from the day they were born. However, regardless of whether these three factors were unified or not, generally speaking, the larger the universe, and the longer it had existed, the stronger the great Tao laws will be. The universe Kui Heng was in now could be said to be ordinary in terms of space, matter, and time. It was an inconspicuous universe. This kind of universe was usually located at the edge and outer layer of the boundless chaos universe. It was the youngest border universe. There were very few experts at the Grand Primordium realm. It was very weak. A similar universe was the final destination of the primordial world corrosion of the boundless chaos universe because the great Tao laws of this universe were very weak. To most immortal kings, this kind of universe could be said to be fragile. It was even possible that just their arrival would cause the universe to collapse. This was the situation in the universe Kui Heng was in. Although it was considered relatively powerful in the desolate borders, it was impossible for the great Tao laws of this universe to reach the level of restricting immortal kings. Even if Kui Heng forcefully set a new law and let the great Tao laws of this universe suppress Feng Sheng's cultivation realm, it was impossible to really achieve this effect. Therefore, after Feng Sheng began to resist, the suppression he suffered stopped abruptly. At the same time, the entire universe began to experience even greater turmoil. The cracks that filled every corner of the universe were about to become larger, and the aura of destruction and collapse became stronger. If this continued, the new law set by Kui Heng would directly collapse and would no longer be of any use. The entire universe would also walk towards the final destruction. This is nothing much. A cold smile appeared on Feng Sheng's face. His cold gaze swept across the front and actually locked onto Kui Heng, who was hundreds of millions of light-years away. At the same time that he locked onto Kui Heng, he could clearly see the strength of Kui Heng's aura. This was comparable to the size of a complete universe, and it was slightly weaker than his. In Feng Sheng's understanding, this was an existence comparable to an invincible immortal king. Even if they were at the same realm, compared to him, who was at the peak of the invincible immortal king realm, there was still a certain difference in strength. And just this difference was enough to cause a world of difference in power. The tricks you use to create laws are not bad, but unfortunately, they're useless. Feng Sheng snorted coldly. At the same time, he took a step forward and instantly arrived where Kui Heng and Venerable Master Ju were. His gaze was cold and his expression was arrogant. His eyes narrowed slightly as his gaze swept across Kui Heng and Venerable Master Ju. He said in a low voice, "I didn't expect that in this universe, other than a Heaven's will who has grasped the power of Heaven Heartmist, there are also two invincible immortal kings. Killing you can be considered an unexpected gain." Feng Sheng's vast experiences had created a sense of absolute confidence for him. As long as he was not facing a quasi-immortal emperor or an expert of a higher level, he had absolute confidence in winning. "I'm invincible below the quasi-immortal emperor realm." This had always been Feng Sheng's mentality. Even if he faced 2, 3, or even more invincible immortal kings at the same time, he could still maintain this absolute confidence. Courting death. Venerable Master Ju looked at Feng Sheng with a mocking expression, as if he was looking at a dead person. In his opinion, Kui Heng, who was beside him, was an existence at the quasi-immortal emperor realm. No matter how powerful Feng Sheng was, he was only an invincible immortal king. To a quasi-immortal emperor, he was like an ant. It's really difficult to imagine how you survived until now. Kui Heng shook his head and sighed softly, but he did not seem to want to attack. "Cut the crap!" Feng Sheng shouted and was about to attack. However, the moment he circulated the power in his body, he suddenly froze there. His entire body became motionless, and his expression was filled with shock. He once again felt the power in his body fading. Moreover, the fading sensation this time was even faster and more sudden than before, directly causing his body to fall into a state of immobility. How is that possible? That ridiculous law is still working? Feng Sheng was horrified. He could hardly believe his senses. How is this possible? How is this possible? The size of this universe was only ordinary. It was definitely not as strong as him, an invincible immortal king. Under normal circumstances, as long as he resisted with all his might, he would definitely break free. As an invincible immortal king, just his size was enough to cause the space and matter of this universe to collapse. At that time, all the great Tao laws would be destroyed, and in the end, the entire universe would return to chaos. Of course, this was only under normal circumstances. At the same time that Feng Sheng began to resist, Kui Heng's fake selves flew out from other universes and fused into this universe with the great Tao laws they had comprehended in other universes. This method could directly increase the size of this universe and naturally increase the strength of the great Tao laws. At the same time, it could strengthen the new laws set by Kui Heng. At this moment, streaks of light and shadows flew out from other universes. They were all Kui Heng's fake selves. As more and more fake selves fused into this universe would become stronger. After all, after these fake selves left, the laws and principles that came from other universes would be absorbed by this universe and completely become a part of it, completing the last step of improvement. 704 The Real Purpose of Emperor Wu, 2. 704 The Real Purpose of Emperor Wu, 2. Of course, at that time, this universe would enter a low point. The overall strength would not be as strong as when it was at its peak, but it would also be far stronger than before. And now that this universe was in the stage of continuous strengthening, the great Tao laws were at the peak of their strength. The newly created law was naturally at its strongest state. In this way, it was naturally effective. I order this universe to form a new law. As long as any Heaven Pass realm experts from the primordial world enter this universe, their realm will directly fall to the peak Tao Heaven realm. This was the law set by Kui Heng. At this moment, it had already become the iron law of this universe. Feng Sheng was incomparably horrified to discover that under the influence of this law, his realm was falling at an unbelievable speed. In just a breath, he fell from the realm of an invincible immortal king to the peak immortal king realm. In less than a breath, he became a top immortal king. Immediately after, he became an ordinary immortal king. In the next moment, his immortal king fruit shattered and disappeared. At the same time, all his comprehension of the Heaven Pass realm disappeared from his mind, as if he had never reached that realm. At this moment, Feng Sheng had already followed the law created by Kui Heng. His cultivation realm had fallen to the peak Tao Heaven realm, equivalent to an immortal monarch of the primordial world or an ancient king of the immeasurable universe. Moreover, this was a drop in realm, not a suppression of realm. Even if Feng Sheng left this universe, it was impossible to change it, nor could he return to his previous cultivation level. Such a sudden change brought about an extremely huge mental impact. No one could accept it. Even though Kui Heng had already released the shackles, Feng Sheng still stood on the spot in a daze. His face was pale, as if he had lost his soul, and his eyes had become empty. Even Venerable Master Ju, who was standing beside Kui Heng, felt his limbs turn cold and his entire body shivered. He looked at Feng Sheng not far away in extreme shock, and his heart was already in turmoil. He really dropped to the Tao Heaven realm, he really dropped. Venerable Master Ju shouted crazily in his heart. I just felt that the great Tao laws of this universe were strengthened countless times in an instant. How did he strengthen the entire universe to such a level in such a short period of time? He actually has such methods. Is this something a quasi-immortal emperor can do? As a cabinet member of the Chaos Heaven Assembly, an existence comparable to an invincible immortal king, his knowledge could not be said to be lacking. He knew many secrets. He knew a lot about the cultivation methods of the Chaos Heaven and the primordial world. However, he had never seen or heard of such an unbelievable technique like Kui Heng's. He had never even thought about it. It was simply unbelievable. In fact, Jun Tian, who had not come here, was even more shocked than Venerable Master Ju. As the original heaven's will of this universe, he knew very well how much stronger this universe had become. This was a strength he had never imagined. What realm is immortal Kui Heng at? Juntian was shocked and glad. Fortunately, I quickly recognized the situation back then. Otherwise, my body and soul would probably have been destroyed by now. However, after the initial extreme shock, he also began to fulfill his duty as Kui Heng's servant and the will of the universe. He wanted to repair the damaged parts of this universe. The destructive power that filled every corner of the universe was quickly erased by Juntian. The blood-colored river that crossed the starry sky dissipated, and countless spatial cracks were quickly repaired. Countless living beings saw this sign of self-repair. To them, this meant that the calamity that had almost descended had been eliminated. They all heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, Kui Heng woke Feng Sheng up and brought him back to the immortal land in the Silver Disk Star Sea. Although he still did not apply any shackles on Feng Sheng this time, Feng Sheng did not dare to have any thoughts related to escaping. Facing such an unbelievably powerful existence, it was definitely impossible to escape. However, Feng Sheng was not completely in despair. After waking up from his extreme shock, he thought of the only way he could escape. Now, I only have one way out, and that is to attract him to spy on my past as much as possible. This way, it might alarm Master and even Ancestral Grandmaster. In Feng Sheng's opinion, the power Kui Heng displayed was so powerful that he had definitely left the scope of an invincible immortal king and reached the peak of the Heaven Pass realm. He was a quasi-immortal emperor. A quasi-immortal emperor could clearly kill him directly, but he went through so much trouble to create a new law and caused him to fall in realm. He definitely had other motives. He most likely wanted to learn the secrets of the primordial world from him. To a quasi-immortal emperor, there was no need to search a person's soul to obtain all kinds of information. He only needed to pry into their past through the river of time. However, in the process of prying into the past, it was possible to accidentally spy on Emperor Wu, who had left traces in his past experiences, and even the teachers of Emperor Wu. Quasi-immortal emperors had already touched the mysteries of time and could spy on the past. Immortal emperors could even directly attack through space and time. If someone spied on them in the river of time, they would definitely be discovered. As long as they sensed the abnormality in the past, they would immediately know that something had happened to him and would save him. This is the only way for me to escape, but how can I lure him to spy on my past? Feng Sheng fell into deep thought, but his expression was still dull. At this moment, Kui Heng suddenly asked him, "Do you think if I directly spy on your past experiences, it will alarm some quasi-immortal emperors or even immortal emperors?" Feng Sheng immediately fell silent and was speechless. For a moment, he did not know what to say. "I plan to try." Kui Heng smiled. Feng Sheng was even more stunned when he heard this, but he was pleasantly surprised. Then, he saw Kui Heng's eyes glow with a bright silver light, as if he could see through time and see all the secrets in the past. This was spying on the past. At a level that Feng Sheng could not detect, Kui Heng used the Eon Light Evasion technique and fused his existence into the river of time, completely hiding himself. With his current cultivation progress in the Eon Light Evasion technique, he would be discovered if he directly spied on the past of a quasi-immortal emperor. However, he would only be spying on the past of an invincible immortal king and would not be discovered by the past quasi-immortal emperors or immortal emperors. Moreover, when prying into the past, he had touched on events related to the quasi-immortal emperor realm and even immortal emperor realm. It could deepen his comprehension of the Tao of Time and his understanding of the Eon Light Evasion technique. In fact, Kui Heng still hoped to see a few more quasi-immortal emperors or immortal emperors during this investigation. In that case, his cultivation speed might increase greatly. He could directly spy on the past of quasi-immortal emperors and not have to worry about being discovered. Unfortunately, what Feng Sheng had expected would never happen. Taiwu Mountain, Wu Imperial Palace. Another disciple of Emperor Wu rushed over after hearing about Feng Sheng's actions. His name was Yang Qing, and he was also an invincible immortal king. "Master, there's something I don't understand." After Yang Qing saw Emperor Wu, he went straight to the point and asked, Why did you only send junior brother Feng to destroy the heaven's will that has grasped the power of heaven heart mist? Chaos, heaven has already sent someone to that universe. Perhaps they've already informed the heaven's wills that has grasped the power of heaven heart light. Perhaps there's already a quasi-immortal emperor in that universe. He was one of the earliest disciples to follow Emperor Wu. He had followed Emperor Wu before he even stepped into the Heaven Pass realm. They had an extremely good relationship, so he dared to ask this. Emperor Wu smiled and said meaningfully, "What I want is for a heaven's will or a quasi-immortal emperor to appear." 705 The strange movement in the boundless chaos sea, the sun on the river of time. 705 The strange movement in the boundless chaos sea, the sun on the river of time. Emperor Wu's meaningful expression puzzled Yang Qing. However, in his opinion, since his master had already made plans, there was no need to continue asking about this. Hence, he asked, "Master, are there any changes in the core universes in the middle of the boundless chaos sea?" "Oh." Emperor Wu laughed when he heard that and asked Yang Qing, "Where did you get the news?" "I obtained it from a martial artist from the lower world," Yang Qing replied. "Previously, the Emperor Mu sent me to the Chaos Sea to kill a martial artist at the Peak Tai realm. I found relevant information in that martial artist's memories. Although he was a disciple of Emperor Wu, he was not under the command of the Taiwu Mountain. Instead, he was working for another quasi-immortal emperor, the Emperor Mu, in the adjacent area of the Taiwu Mountain. This was also a common behavior among quasi-immortal emperors. They would send important disciples to serve other quasi-immortal emperors to better the relationship between them. Ha ha ha, not bad, not bad. Emperor Wu nodded and praised, a martial artist at the Peak Tai realm. This is already an existence comparable to an invincible immortal king. Moreover, this group of martial artists has the home ground advantage in the boundless chaos sea. They are even stronger than normal invincible immortal kings. It's really not easy for you to kill them and search their memories. At this point, he paused, and his expression suddenly became serious. He said in a low voice, "The information you found is not wrong. The core universes in the middle of the boundless chaos sea have indeed changed. I just received news not long ago that an expert at the Heaven-Earth Saint realm had passed away without warning. This is an unprecedented loss to the boundless chaos sea, and it's also the best opportunity for us to counterattack. Previously, it was always the boundless chaos sea that provoked the battle. The primordial world can only passively defend. This time is different. The immortal ancestors will lead us to take the initiative to attack." A Heaven-Earth Saint realm expert was equivalent to an immortal ancestor realm expert. It was said that during the cultivation process, he had truly comprehended the mysteries left behind by the Supreme God of Earth and the Supreme God of Heaven. He had completed the extreme sublimation of the essence of life and reached a strength equivalent to a heaven's will that had grasped the power of heaven-heart phenomenon. The immortal ancestors who had died in the Great Tribulation in the primordial world were killed by the Heaven-Earth Saint realm experts and the heaven's wills who had grasped the power of heaven-heart phenomenon. However, in terms of numbers, even the Heaven-Earth Saint realm experts and the heaven's wills who had grasped the heaven-heart phenomenon combined were not as many as the immortal ancestors in the primordial world. Now that another Heaven-Earth Saint realm existence had died in the boundless chaos sea, it was definitely an incomparably huge loss. If this news was true, it would be a great thing for the entire primordial world. That was because the death of a Heaven-Earth Saint realm expert would not only reduce the number of top experts in the boundless chaos sea, but also affect the laws of the entire chaos sea. As the Heaven-Earth Saint realm cultivators were experts who had grasped the power left behind by the Supreme God of Heaven and the Supreme God of Earth, after they died, the substances and laws in the endless chaos sea would become weaker for a certain period of time. At this moment, it could be said to be the most fragile period of the boundless chaos sea. Therefore, many experts felt that if the primordial world took this opportunity to strike first, they might be able to obtain unprecedented results. However, after explaining this matter, Emperor Wu said to Yang Qing with a faint smile, "What do you think? If we attack the boundless chaos sea now, can we really succeed in obtaining a major result like I said?" Yang Qing fell into deep thought when he heard this. All kinds of thoughts kept flashing through his mind. A moment later, he shook his head gently and said, "I'm afraid it's not that easy. Heaven-Earth Saint Realm experts are comparable to immortal ancestors. There must be a problem for one to suddenly die without warning. It's very likely a trap set up by the Chaos Sea." "That's right." Emperor Wu nodded and said, "This is very likely a trap. If we act rashly, we might incur huge losses. But is there a possibility that a Heaven-Earth Saint Realm expert has really passed away in the boundless Chaos Sea? This is also possible. If we miss this opportunity, I don't know how many billions of years we'll have to wait. After all, the weakening of the laws of the boundless chaos caused by the death of a Heaven-Earth Saint Realm expert can only last for 1,000 or 2,000 years at most. This is too short and it's easy to miss. It's actually only 1,000 to 2,000 years." Yang Qing was a little surprised when he heard this. To experts at their level, 1,000 to 2,000 years was indeed too short. However, after his surprise, his heart suddenly skipped a beat as he asked, "Master, can immortal kings not sense the weakening laws?" "Very sharp." Emperor Wu nodded and praised. He smiled and said, "That's right. This law has weakened more on the level of time and the core of the Chaos Sea. It has almost no effect on living beings below the quasi-immortal Emperor realm." "Then I understand." Yang Qing came to a realization. "Master, you only sent junior brother Feng to that universe this time because you wanted to take this opportunity to lure a quasi-immortal emperor or the heavens will that has grasped the power of Heaven Heartlight to attack so that you can verify the situation in the boundless Chaos Sea." "That's right." Emperor Wu nodded slightly and smiled. "However, the boundless Chaos Sea should also know this. Even if there's really a quasi-immortal emperor or a heavens will who has grasped the power of Heaven Heartlight attacking, they will definitely deliberately hide their traces." As he spoke, he flipped his hand and took out a bronze mirror. The front was bright and clear, and the back was carved with a river-like pattern and complicated words. "This treasure is called the Lost Water Treasure Mirror." Emperor Wu held the bronze mirror in his hand. "This is a treasure mirror personally refined by immortal Emperor Tianxue. It's specially for this matter. It can monitor the subtle fluctuations of the river of time." 706 The Strange Movement in the Boundless Chaos Sea, the Sun on the River of Time, 2. 706 The Strange Movement in the Boundless Chaos Sea, the Sun on the River of Time, 2. As long as a quasi-immortal emperor or heavens will who has grasped the power of Heaven Heartlight takes action, they will definitely not be able to escape the surveillance of the Lost Water Treasure Mirror. At that time, it will be obvious if the laws of the boundless Chaos Sea have weakened. Master is far-sighted. Yang Qing cupped his hands and smiled. Junior brother Feng also has an important mission this time. When he returns, I'll reward him well. Emperor Wu smiled. While the two of them were discussing happily, they had no idea that Feng Sheng had already fallen to the Dao Heaven realm, from an invincible immortal king to an ordinary immortal monarch. In fact, just as Emperor Wu and Yang Qing were about to monitor the changes in the laws and river of time in the boundless Chaos Sea, Kui Heng had already begun to pry into Feng Sheng's past. In Kui Heng's eyes, all of Feng Sheng's experiences in this life had turned into a series of images. Feng Sheng's background, growth, apprenticeship, cultivation, travel, and other series of experiences were all clearly visible. Every detail he experienced during this process was completely reflected in these images. At this moment, as long as he used his dharmic powers to compress these images to the physical level and distorted the material form of Fengsheng, he could turn Fengsheng's material form into a legend of Fengsheng. Back then, the yellow-scarved strongman had used this method to compress Hao Jun into the legend of Hao Jun. Using this method to investigate a person's past was very fast. Therefore, not long after, the images of Feng Sheng's life reached a critical time. From Kui Heng's perspective, he met a quasi-immortal emperor called Emperor Wu. This is a quasi-immortal emperor. Kui Heng was now investigating from the perspective of the River of Time, so the version of Emperor Wu that he saw was naturally based on the spectrum of time. Unlike early-stage return to Void Realm cultivators who had their legs submerged in the River of Time, quasi-immortal emperors seemed to have half of their body submerged in the River of Time. Moreover, Their body was extremely huge and had a huge impact on the flow of the river of time. This also caused the power of time entangled on the body of quasi-immortal emperors to become even denser. The dense power of time would allow a quasi-immortal emperor to exert stronger influence on the spectrum of time. This meant that a quasi-immortal emperor could have powerful time-type techniques. Qui Heng roughly estimated that from the power of time that he could mobilize, Emperor Wu was stronger than his current self. There was no need to mention his dharmic powers and body. Clearly, he was countless times stronger than him. Of course, there were gains and losses. The power of time entangled in his body was too dense, and there were more negative effects. If one was immersed in the river of time too much, they would be affected by the power of time. This caused the quasi-immortal emperors to be almost unable to defend against time-type spells and could only trade attacks equally. When the same time-type attack landed on a quasi-immortal emperor, the damage and effect would also increase exponentially. To put it simply, a quasi-immortal emperor was considered to be a type of high offensive and brittle defense character on the spectrum of time. Due to the different states of the river of time, early-stage return to void cultivators were relatively balanced. Moreover, the grasp of time power by return to void cultivators did not depend on how much time power they were entangled with. Instead, it was affected by the depth of their investigation of time and the time-type spells they cultivated. If Qui Heng cultivated a few more high-level time-type spells now, the amount of time power he could mobilize would almost be the same as a quasi-immortal emperor. In addition, because quasi-immortal emperors were washed by the currents of the river of time too much, they would be corroded more by the power of time and usher in their final death faster. In about 30 billion years, or 5 Primeval eras, Emperor Wu will completely perish. Qui Heng had sensed it in his heart and saw through the lifespan of Emperor Wu at a glance. Then, he saw other quasi-immortal emperors in Fengsheng's past experiences. They were all close to Emperor Wu and could even be called good friends. Without exception, half of these quasi-immortal emperors' bodies were submerged in the river of time and were corroded by the power of the river of time. They would face the end result of an early death. Among them, the one with the longest lifespan was about 7 Primeval eras. Calculating according to the chaos calamity that happened once every 12 to 18 Primeval eras, they would not have a chance to participate in the next chaos calamity. How did the quasi-immortal emperors of the primordial world die so quickly? Qui Heng was a little puzzled. However, he quickly found the answer from the memory of these quasi-immortal emperors. The primordial world had long found a solution to this situation of being corroded by the power of time. As long as one participated in the process of the primordial world annexing the universe to expand, they could use the various changes caused by the expansion of the primordial world to wear down a portion of the time corrosion in their body and recover a large amount of their lifespan. Letting the primordial world annex a desolate universe could roughly recover the lifespan of 1 Primeval era. A higher-level universe could recover 2 Primeval eras of lifespan. The closer the level of the universe was to the core universe of the boundless Chaos Sea, the more lifespan they could recover. If the primordial world could absorb the universes around the core of the Chaos Sea, they could even recover a lifespan of hundreds of Primeval eras in one go. If they absorbed the universe in the core of the Chaos Sea, that was just a thought for a quasi-immortal emperor. No one had ever let the primordial world succeed in absorbing that kind of universe, not even an immortal emperor. At this moment, Qui Heng came to a realization. The reason why the primordial world and the boundless Chaos Sea became mortal enemies was not purely because the primordial world wanted to expand. Instead, it was because the higher-ups of the primordial world needed to let the original world expand. If they did not expand, they would die step by step. This is a fight to the death. Qui Heng could not help but sigh with emotion. Then, he continued to investigate Fengsheng's past. After screening through the images one after another, he suddenly saw an incomparably dazzling light in front of him. A bright silver light of time was actually floating above the river of time, emitting endless light like a sun. Such a situation really shocked Qui Heng. He almost left the perspective of the river of time and completely hid his aura. The power of time contained in the sun in front of him was too terrifying. Just looking at that sun made one feel that time had been distorted, and the past, present, and future would be affected. However, Kui Heng quickly realized that although the light of this sun was strong, it could not shine on him. Under the influence of the Aeon Light Evasion spell, he had already fused with the River of Time. When the light of the sun shone over, it was as if it was shining on an ordinary stretch of the River of Time, unable to affect him at all. After confirming this, Kui Heng began to observe more carefully. Then, he realized that this sun was actually not floating in the sky above the River of Time. Instead, a pillar of light connected this sun to the River of Time. From the form, immortal emperors were like a lighthouse in the River of Time. The light they released affected the past, present, and future at the same time. This is an immortal emperor. Kui Heng was rather surprised. The cultivation path from the quasi-immortal emperor realm is to gather as much time power as possible and integrate it into their body. At this moment, he could clearly feel that the immortal emperor's body was intertwined with the power of time that was far stronger than a quasi-immortal emperor. This was clearly not the path to transcend time like Return to Void Realm cultivators. Instead, he gathered the power of time on himself and constantly increased his influence on time. If he took such a path, what was the ultimate realm of this path? Could it be that he was gathering all the power of time? Was it really possible to reach that level? Or could it be that this path might not reach a higher level at all? Kui Heng looked at the vast river of time and fell into deep thought. He could see that the sun was gathering a huge amount of the power of time, affecting the past, present, and future. At the same time, the river of time stirred up tidal waves around it. It was as if it wanted to judge the pillar of light that supported the sun and let it fall back into the river of time. 707 The Huge Pressure from an Immortal Emperor. 707 The Huge Pressure from an Immortal Emperor. The existence of an immortal emperor would distort time. This was reflected on the river of time. The river water kept raising waves and attacking this immortal emperor lighthouse. Once the pillar of light that supported the sun above was destroyed, the outcome could be imagined. In a sense, this cultivation method was the true profound mystery of seizing the creation of the world and invading the sun and moon. On the spectrum of time, immortal emperors are extremely powerful. They can even attack from the past to the present. Kui Heng observed the influence of immortal emperors on the past, present, and future and was rather shocked. This also meant that even a return to void cultivator like him, if he did not cultivate time-type spells, could be attacked by immortal emperors from other spacetime dimensions at any time. Even if he would not be killed, the feeling of being passively beaten would definitely not feel good. Immortal emperors were powerful, but they had the same problem as quasi-immortal emperors. They were still glass cannons. It was even more brittle. Time-type spells could cause extremely huge damage to immortal emperors, and time interference-type spells could also cause extremely terrifying effects. The river of time that they were submerged in was the greatest help. Kui Heng even suspected that if he used the time saber to slash an immortal emperor, it was possible to cut off all the lifespan of an immortal emperor with a single slash. With his current realm, although he could not see through how much lifespan this immortal emperor called Chen had, from the strength of the entanglement of time and his life aura, he felt that it should be about 500 prime val eras. In that case, I only need to use the time saber to slash him 500 times and I'll be able to cut him to death. Kui Heng chuckled in his heart. Of course, this was clearly impossible. Immortal emperors were not dead wooden stakes. They would not stand there and let him use the time saber on them freely. However, even immortal emperor experts would most likely panic and retreat if they suddenly felt that they had lost a prime val era of their lifespan after being slashed by a saber. Before he had enough powerful imprisonment measures, the time saber was a very good choice to use as a self-defense spell to scare away immortal emperors. I still have a lot of origin power left. I can use it to deduce another spell in the imprisoning direction. Kui Heng thought to himself. The power of quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors made him feel a sense of danger. He had to upgrade the spells he had to be at ease. Then, he continued to investigate Feng Sheng's past experiences. Images flashed before his eyes, indicating that he had flipped through the entire life of this invincible immortal king. Looking from Feng Sheng's perspective, Kui Heng's understanding of the primordial world, the boundless chaos sea, the immeasurable universe, the core universe, and other information had greatly increased. He was one step closer to the level of knowing everything. At the same time, his cultivation realm increased rapidly. There was no need to mention the improvement in his body, soul, and dharmic powers. This improvement was mainly reflected in his control of time power and the further sublimation of his essence. Previously, Kui Heng's influence on the spectrum of time was such that he had half of his legs stuck in the river of time. Now that he had raised his legs a little higher, the scouring of time on him became even smaller. Although it was only a little, the feedback was a huge increase in his cultivation realm. As his perspective increased, he could look down at the river of time more clearly. He also gained a little more understanding of the use of the power of time and naturally possessed a divine power. Control over the flow of time. In other words, Kui Heng could now accelerate or slow down time, turning a day into a year, or turning a year into a day. Now, the limit of my control over the flow of time is only a multiple of 300 to 400. Kui Heng thought to himself, as my cultivation realm increases, this multiplier will continue to increase. In the future, I might be able to reach tens of thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times, or even millions of times. If my realm continues to increase, I wonder if I can rewind time or even directly change the past. The power of time was too mysterious. Any effect could involve all aspects, causing one's imagination to run wild. From now on, time in the usual sense doesn't mean much to me. Kui Heng felt the flow of time around him and looked at the flow of time that was washing over him. Suddenly, he felt a little emotional. With my current cultivation realm, I can at most control the flow of time in a universe. If I'm countless times stronger, can I control the flow of time in the entire river of time? If there's really a reversal of time, can I return time to its original starting point and return to the birth of the beginning and end as long as I reverse the flow of the entire river of time? Thinking of this, he shook his head gently and stopped thinking about it. Many times, too many unfounded guesses about cultivation could easily form a certain level of cognitive impediment, restricting one's thoughts. It was not a good thing. It was safer to be down to earth and take things one step at a time. The information from an invincible immortal king allowed my cultivation progress at the early stage void return realm to improve by 30%. Kui Heng thought to himself, this is mainly because I knew too little about the primordial world before this. According to this efficiency, I'm afraid I still need to scry the past of more than 10 invincible immortal kings to complete the cultivation of the early stage void return realm. After all, if they're all invincible immortal kings, the information they know will definitely be repetitive. The more I investigate, the lower the value and the smaller the improvement. However, the information that Feng Sheng knows is focused on the continent he came from. If there are invincible immortal kings from other continents, there should be even greater gains. 708 The huge pressure from an immortal emperor, 2. 708 The huge pressure from an immortal emperor, 2. Other than that, I have to scry the past of a quasi-immortal emperor. The gains shouldn't be small. From the state of the quasi-immortal emperor I saw earlier, it's not impossible to investigate the past of a quasi-immortal emperor. When I reach more than half of the cultivation in the early stage void return realm and the process of transcending time is a little higher, I can look down on more of the river of time. I should be able to directly scry the past of a quasi-immortal emperor. It's very difficult to make any progress with the primordial world now. It's best to start from the boundless chaos sea next. Moreover, there's a very good opportunity. At this moment, he thought of Venerable Master Ju. Previously, he had planned to ask Venerable Master Ju about the Chaos Heaven and the primordial world. But before he could speak, Feng Sheng had barged into this universe. However, before that, I still have to deal with something. Kui Heng's gaze turned to Feng Sheng, who was not far away. What should he do with him now? This was a question worth thinking about. If he killed him directly, it would definitely attract his master's attention. At that time, it would be bad if the quasi-immortal emperor attacked. Although Kui Heng was already confident enough to defeat a quasi-immortal emperor, as long as he fought with a quasi-immortal emperor, the entire universe would probably be smashed into pieces. But if he let him go, the trouble he would attract would only be greater. Forget it, I should just suppress him. Kui Heng finally shook his head and chose the third method. He would not kill or release him. He would directly suppress him. He would deal with him after his cultivation realm increased. Of course, to suppress an invincible immortal king who had a quasi-immortal emperor or even an immortal emperor backing him, he definitely could not use ordinary methods. Hence, Kui Heng flicked his finger gently and tore a small hole in the void. In the blink of an eye, the shattered space was crushed into a ball of grey chaotic chi by an invisible force. Then, the chaos divided into clear and turbid energies and turned into yin and yang energies. The clear yang rose into the sky, and the turbid yin sank into the ground. A wisp of Kui Heng's will descended and transformed into the great Tao, derived laws, demarcated order, and living beings. In an instant, a vast world had already formed. Its life essence was extremely high, enough to withstand the birth of invincible immortal kings. This also meant that even invincible immortal kings could not destroy this world. At the same time, a door of light that emitted a faint green light appeared in front of Fengsheng. The light inside slowly spun, as if it led to an unknown world. Please go in. Kui Heng smiled at Fengsheng. You'll definitely regret it. Fengsheng gritted his teeth and looked at Kui Heng, his eyes filled with hatred. However, he could not do anything and could only walk towards the door of light helplessly. Standing in front of the door of light, he stopped in his tracks and looked around the surrounding starry sky. He sensed the nomological situation of this universe and realized that there were still no signs of anyone descending from the outside. This left him in a daze. He did not understand why his master had yet to make a move after his past experiences had been forcefully read. Could it be that this person was already powerful enough to avoid the perception of a quasi-immortal emperor on the spectrum of time? However, even if they were both quasi-immortal emperors, they would still be discovered by the other party after meeting on the spectrum of time. How could such a thing happen? Or could it be that Master already knew the situation on his side but did not intend to save him? But why? What reason did Master have to do this? Fengsheng was puzzled no matter how he thought about it. In the end, he could only silently walk into the door of light. The moment he stepped into the door of light, he immediately felt the world spin. It was as if he had been thrown billions of light years away, and his body and soul were almost separated. When he felt that his surroundings had stabilized, he realized that he had already fallen into a valley filled with trees. The huge impact of the fall had created a deep pit in the ground here, and many trees had already fallen to the ground. Fengsheng tried to stand up, but he suddenly felt weak all over. His body and soul suddenly became extremely uncoordinated and he actually fell to the ground. Where's the immortal power in my body? He was incomparably shocked to discover that the immortal power in his body had disappeared, leaving only the power of his physical body, let alone any divine powers. However, he quickly understood what was going on. This was the suppression of the laws of this world. As long as he was in this world, he would not have any immortal power. The immortal power that originally existed in his body also disappeared after he entered this world. Moreover, the power of his body was also declining extremely quickly. It would probably not be long before he fell to the level of the Tao realm or even the true world realm. At that time, he would become a person who only had a long lifespan but was far from the corresponding cultivation level. Do you want to use this method to suppress me in this world forever? Fengsheng's expression was gloomy, and his eyes were filled with hatred. But then, he sneered. You'll definitely regret it. You only created a world to seal me. I'll be found soon. Even if you can rely on your quasi-immortal emperor strength to hide from my master's investigation on the time spectrum, you can only be exposed when facing immortal emperor and Chen's search. At that time, you have nowhere to escape. In his opinion, although the strength Kui Heng displayed was powerful, it was still within the scope of a quasi-immortal emperor. As long as an immortal emperor attacked, Kui Heng would definitely die. However, in reality, be it Emperor Wu, who was a quasi-immortal emperor, or An Chen, who was an immortal emperor, it was impossible for them to attack Kui Heng, let alone discover Fengsheng, who was suppressed in this world. That was because after Fengsheng entered this world, Kuiheng had cast a spell on it. Eon light evasion. After his cultivation realm increased, his ability on the time spectrum further became stronger, and the power of Eon light evasion naturally increased greatly. The current Eon light evasion could not only be used on himself, but also on others. It could also be used on items. Due to the effect of Eon light evasion, this world directly fused into the river of time and completely disappeared on the time spectrum. Whether it was the past, present, or future, this small world did not exist. It was as if it had never appeared. Other than Kuiheng, no one could discover his traces on the time spectrum. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, Kuiheng even let a fake self put the universe he was in into his sleeve. Then, he used Eon light evasion to let this fake self escape into the river of time and hide this universe on the time spectrum. In this way, even immortal emperors would not be able to find this universe. Of course, this was only a time spectrum concealment. There had to be a spatial level concealment added on top to be foolproof. This was easy. Kuiheng let his fake self display the essence of life that transcended the universe and hid in the endless chaos sea. It was impossible to find its location. After this series of operations, it finally met Kuiheng's safety standards. I can finally heave a sigh of relief. The pressure that immortal emperors gave me is still too great. Whether it's the essence of life or the methods of power, they far exceed my current self. With my current strength, if I face an immortal emperor, I can only hide in the Grotto Heaven Dao Palace. It's best if I can have some countermeasures. It's time to deduce an imprisonment-type spell. As long as I can temporarily imprison an immortal emperor, coupled with the effect of the time saber, I can threaten an immortal emperor. Thinking of this, he entered the Grotto Heaven Dao Palace and ordered the system. Consume 100 points of origin power and use the high-level immortal technique, from initiate to ascension to deduce spells. The direction of deduction is imprisonment. Congratulations! You have used 100 points of origin power to successfully deduce the imprisonment-type spell Immortal Binding Rope. Primordial World, Taiwu Mountain. The smile on Emperor Wu's face suddenly froze, and his eyes widened, as if he had sensed something unbelievable. Yang Qing hurriedly asked, "Master, what happened? Did a quasi-immortal emperor take action? Should we bring junior brother Feng back immediately?" "No, that's not right. How is this possible?" Emperor Wu said in surprise. "He disappeared. Feng Sheng has disappeared. Even that universe has disappeared." "What?" Yang Qing also revealed an expression of disbelief. How is this possible?" 709 Locking the Time River, Binding the Immortals. 709 Locking the Time River, Binding the Immortals. "Master, was that universe destroyed?" Yang Qing could not help but ask. A universe suddenly disappeared into thin air. This kind of thing was too unbelievable and difficult to understand. "No." Emperor Wu shook his head gently and said, "I didn't sense any signs of destruction in that spacetime. It's impossible for it to have been destroyed. It's very likely that it was teleported away." "Teleportation?" Yang Qing said in surprise. "Although the universe is floating in the chaos sea, it's not a simple matter to move it. It's impossible for an invincible immortal king to do it." "Master, has a quasi-immortal emperor taken action?" Emperor Wu fell silent. He looked at the lost water treasure mirror. After a long while, he said very reluctantly, "No, there are no signs of a quasi-immortal emperor taking action." Then, Yang Qing was also confused. The lost water treasure mirror was a treasure personally refined by an immortal emperor. It could accurately monitor the subtle fluctuations of the river of time. As for quasi-immortal emperors, they had extremely powerful time power. However, if they attacked, they would definitely cause ripples in the river of time. Now, Master said that the lost water treasure mirror had not detected anything. How did this happen? It couldn't be that something had gone wrong with this treasure mirror, right? However, how could a treasure personally refined by an immortal emperor make a mistake? Could it be that the person who attacked had exceeded the maximum monitoring limit of the lost water treasure mirror? Didn't this mean that an existence comparable to an immortal emperor had taken action? Junior brother Feng was only an invincible immortal king. To a quasi-immortal emperor, he was like an ant. How could he alarm an immortal emperor? No matter what, he could not understand it. It was really unbelievable. Even the lost water treasure mirror can't find any traces of that universe. At this moment, Emperor Wu also became tense, and his surprise became stronger and stronger. It's too strange. Whether it's in the boundless chaos sea or on the time spectrum, there's no trace of that universe. It's as if it never existed. How can such a thing happen? Could it be an immortal emperor? Facing such a situation that he had never encountered before, a quasi-immortal emperor like Emperor Wu could not figure it out at all. In fact, like Yang Qing, he began to wonder if this was done by an immortal emperor. But why was this happening? Why would an immortal emperor make a move? If it was just for Feng Sheng, it was definitely not worth it. If it was really an immortal emperor, there must be a deeper reason. Moreover, he was clearly hiding something by hiding the universe so decisively. Thinking of this, an idea suddenly flashed in Emperor Wu's mind. He felt that he had finally grasped the key to the problem. His eyes immediately lit up, and a cold smile appeared on his face. I see. He really revealed his own evil designs unintentionally. Yang Qing was confused and did not understand why his master suddenly laughed. He hurriedly asked, "Master, what's wrong? Did you discover any clues? Were you also guessing that an immortal emperor had interfered in this matter just now?" Emperor Wu asked instead of answering and looked at Yang Qing. Yes. Yang Qing nodded and said in a low voice, "Other than an immortal emperor, I really can't think of any other reason for this unbelievable situation." Then our guess should be the same. It's most likely that an immortal emperor has taken action. Emperor Wu nodded slightly and said, "Do you still remember what I told you before? I wanted Feng Sheng to lure out a quasi-immortal emperor. Because there's news that a Heaven-Earth Saint Realm expert has passed away in the boundless chaos sea. You want to use this to verify the authenticity of this news." At this point, Yang Qing suddenly felt enlightened. His entire body tensed up. "I also know what's going on. Not bad." Emperor Wu nodded and said, "This immortal emperor suddenly attacked and hid so deeply. He even hid the entire universe. He's probably hiding the changes in the laws of that universe. This also means that there must be a problem with the changes in the laws of that universe, and it's very disadvantageous to them. This is actually the result I wanted to verify. I reckon that there's really a big problem. Master is right. I guess so too. However, I have another thought," Yang Qing said very respectfully. "What thought?" Emperor Wu asked. "What if this act of hiding a universe was a trap to deceive us?" Yang Qing said in a low voice. "Yes, that's indeed possible." Emperor Wu nodded in agreement with Yang Qing's words. Then, he said, "However, the possibility is extremely small. After all, our goal is to investigate if a Heaven-Earth Saint Realm expert has really died. As long as there's no definite news, we won't act rashly. Such a trap is almost impossible to work. Moreover, it's not easy to teleport a universe away, let alone hide it on the time spectrum and hide the past and future of this universe. If they want to achieve such an effect completely, they need at least 2 experts comparable to immortal emperors to make a move with all their might. They most likely need a Heaven-Earth Saint to supervise on the side. Otherwise, the immortal emperors will suffer the backlash of time. Even so, after completing this matter, the immortal emperors will still suffer a backlash from the river of time. Their strength will greatly decrease for a period of time, and their combat strength will be severely damaged. Such a powerful lineup and such a heavy price was paid just for a dangerous situation that's almost impossible to succeed. This is clearly unlikely, but it's very normal if it's to hide the signs of the death of a Heaven-Earth Saint Realm expert. Although this also has the risk of arousing suspicion, as long as we can't completely confirm if a Heaven-Earth Saint has really died, we usually won't act rashly. 710 Locking the Time River, Binding the Immortals, 2. 710 Locking the Time River, Binding the Immortals, 2. Even if we want to continue probing in other universes, We still need to mobilize the quasi-immortal emperors to take action. However, after this battle, those quasi-immortal emperors will definitely be on guard and will probably not take action easily for thousands of years. Under normal circumstances, it's very normal for a quasi-immortal emperor to not take action for thousands or tens of thousands of years. We can't tell if this is intentionally avoided or normal. In that case, the boundless chaos sea is more likely to drag on for thousands of years and survive this crisis. I see. Yang Qing was enlightened. Then, he asked, Master, how should we deal with this matter? This act of hiding the universe is clearly very suspicious. Moreover, there's junior brother Feng. I will personally meet Immortal Emperor Tianshui and Immortal Emperor An Chen and report the situation in detail, Emperor Wu said in a low voice. At that time, it will be up to the two Immortal Emperors to decide how to deal with it. I will also ask them to save Feng Sheng. Immortal Emperor An Chen was the ruler of the continent where the Taiwu Mountain was located, while Immortal Emperor Tianshui was a rogue immortal and was not in charge of the management of the primordial world. However, he had a good relationship with Emperor Wu's master. Master is wise. Yang Qing first flattered him, then asked, Master, there's something I don't understand. Aren't quasi-immortal emperor and immortal emperors powerful enough to grasp the mysteries of time? Why would they still suffer the backlash of the river of time? Have you reached the edge of touching the mysteries of time? Emperor Wu sized up Yang Qing and smiled. Not bad, your cultivation has improved a lot. In that case, it's time to tell you this. Although quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors have grasped the mysteries of time, they are also enduring the curse of time. Although the cultivation system of the boundless chaos sea is different from ours, they have the same endpoints. It's roughly equivalent, and there are similar problems. Actually, ever since we reached the quasi-immortal emperor realm, we've been improving ourselves by constantly invading the power of the river of time. This way, we'll naturally be rejected or even targeted by the power of time. Therefore, be it a quasi-immortal emperor or an immortal emperor, when they use time techniques, they usually won't unleash more than 50% of their full strength to ensure absolute control. If one exceeds the limits of their control when using time techniques, it's very likely that they will suffer a backlash from the river of time. At best, their lifespan will be greatly reduced, and at worst, their cultivation will fall. The consequences will be extremely serious. This is also the reason why quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors rarely use time techniques in battle of the same level. Because they are entangled with too much time power, they will suffer extremely huge damage when they encounter an attack on the time spectrum. As long as they can't kill the other party in one strike and make him lose all ability to resist, they will also suffer an equivalent attack from the power of time. They will definitely suffer extremely huge and even unbearable damage. There's actually such a thing. Yang Qing said in surprise. In that case, the power of time is actually more like a deterrence power for quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors. It's not easily used. That's right. Emperor Wu nodded and said, when you step into the quasi-immortal emperor realm in the future, you have to be careful at all times. At that time, I'll teach you a secret technique to defend against time. This secret technique can ensure that you won't be killed in a single strike on the time spectrum. There's a chance to counterattack. It's a secret technique that all quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors must cultivate. Thank you, Master. Yang Qing hurriedly bowed and thanked him. All right, you and I have been master and disciple for a long time. There's no need to be so polite. Emperor Wu waved his hand gently and said, follow me to see Immortal Emperor An Chen. In the Grotto Heaven Dao Palace. Kui Heng circulated the dharmic powers in his body and stretched out his right index finger to gently swipe through the void. Immediately, a rope that emitted a bright golden light appeared out of thin air. An extremely terrifying shackling power was intertwined on this rope. The surrounding laws, matter, space, and time were affected, as if they were all imprisoned by this rope. This is the immortal binding rope. Kui Heng felt the powerful imprisonment power contained in this spell and was extremely surprised in his heart. He thought to himself, with the power of this spell, even cultivators who have reached the limit of the early stage return to Void Realm will be imprisoned. Immortal cultivators who have just stepped into the mid-stage return to Void Realm will probably be greatly affected as well. They might even be imprisoned for an instant. This power is too terrifying. This is only the initial form of power. What kind of scene would it be if it was advanced further? No wonder the description of this spell is that it has the power to bind immortals. This immortal was not the same as the immortals of the martial path. They were immortals who had truly walked the path of immortal cultivation. Immortal binding rope locks the river of time and space and binds immortals. This technique is the highest manifestation of the Tao of imprisonment. If cultivated to a high level, it has the power to freeze time and bind immortals. The description was very short. Even when Kui Heng deduced this spell, he did not see any huge phenomena. He only felt that everything around him had stopped at that moment. It was as if the entire space-time and all the great Tao laws had frozen, as if they were imprisoned by an invisible force. This temporary imprisonment and stillness was almost imperceptible. If not for the fact that Kui Heng had already transcended the universe and looked down at the essence of life in the river of time, and had grasped the immortal binding rope spell, he would not have been able to discover this short change in space-time. With this technique, as long as my cultivation advances another step and I complete half of my early stage return to void cultivation, I can easily crush quasi-immortal emperors and not be afraid of ordinary immortal emperors. Kui Heng was in a very good mood. Although the immortal binding rope at this stage might only be able to imprison an immortal emperor for a short moment, as long as it was combined with his divine power to slow down time, it could imprison the other party for a longer time. Next, he only needed to keep using the time saber. Of course, the power of time grasped by an immortal emperor was extremely powerful, and it was not something he could compare to now. If an immortal emperor resisted with all his might, he would definitely be able to affect the flow of time. His time saber might not even be able to hit the other party more than a few times. The body of an immortal emperor is still too strong. If I want to truly fight against an immortal emperor, I probably have to reach the peak of the early stage return to Void Realm or step into the mid-stage return to Void Realm. Moreover, there are levels among immortal emperors. Immortal emperors like Immortal Emperor and Chen, who are in charge of managing the continent, are only the most ordinary immortal emperors. True experts are not in charge of these miscellaneous matters. Thinking of this, Kui Heng suppressed the emotions in his heart and thought to himself, I'm not strong enough yet. It's best to not provoke immortal emperors. I should go and find Venerable Master Ju first to understand the situation of the Chaos Heaven to increase my cultivation realm. When Kui Heng was suppressing Feng Sheng, Venerable Master Ju had gone to the immortal land in the middle of the Silver Disk Star Sea. At this moment, he knew very well that even if immortal Kui Heng was not a true immortal emperor, he definitely held an immortal emperor-level supreme treasure and was extremely powerful. Instead of staying there and getting in the way, it was better to return to that world and quietly wait for immortal Kui Heng's return. However, Venerable Master Ju's return alone surprised immortal Monarch Chonghe and Fang He. Immortal Monarch Chonghe could not help but ask, Lord, why didn't immortal Kui Heng come back with us? After all, after Kui Heng suppressed Feng Sheng, he went to the Grotto Heaven Dao Palace and suddenly disappeared from their perspective. This was very unsettling. Hong Fugue, Jun Tian, Daoist Su, and the others had normal expressions. In their hearts, Kui Heng was an omnipotent existence. There would be no accidents at all. Don't worry, immortal Kui. Venerable Master Ju was about to explain when he suddenly saw ripples in the void at the side. Amidst the void ripples, Kui Heng appeared out of thin air and smiled. The matter has been resolved. Then, he said to Venerable Master Ju, can we talk in private? 711 Her figure in the past. 711 Her figure in the past. Venerable Master Ju followed Kui Heng to a side hall with a very respectful attitude. Venerable Master, there's no need to be nervous. I just want to understand some things from you, Kui Heng asked. About the situation in the Chaos Heaven, as well as the boundless Chaos Sea and the immeasurable universe. Please speak, Lord Immortal, Venerable Master Ju said respectfully. Facing Kui Heng's question, he planned to answer truthfully. As long as it did not involve too many secrets, he could answer. After all, from immortal Kui Heng's performance, he was at least in existence at the quasi-immortal Emperor realm. He might even be close to the immortal Emperor realm. Moreover, this was an expert who was an enemy of the primordial world. Such an existence was even rarer for the boundless Chaos Sea. If such an expert wanted to forcefully investigate his past, he might not even feel anything. Now that he was asking so formally, he was clearly giving him enough respect. He had to know what was good for him. Let's start from the origin of the Chaos Heaven. Kui Heng smiled. Although he had already gained some understanding of the Chaos Heaven from Feng Sheng's past experience, it was very limited. He did not know many details, and it was difficult to determine if it was real or fake. Yes, Lord Immortal. Venerable Master Ju nodded and said respectfully, Chaos Heaven is an organization that manages the entire boundless chaos universe. It's in charge of formulating the overall development plan and counter-attacking the primordial world. The core members are mainly martial artists at the Tai realm, Taisha realm, and Taisu realm. Together with the Heaven's wills that have grasped the power of Heaven Heart, there's an organization called the Chaos Heaven Assembly. He first explained the main organizational structure of Chaos Heaven before beginning to explain the reason for the establishment of Chaos Heaven. At first, the universes of the immeasurable universe in the Chaos Sea were all independent. The counterattack on the primordial world was also relatively scattered. This made it very easy for the experts of the primordial world to destroy them one by one. In the end, about 300 Primeval eras ago, 3 Heaven-Earth Saints and 2 Heavens Will experts who had grasped the power of Heaven Heart phenomenon put together an organization. The top experts of the various universes sat together and began to discuss establishing a unified organization to prepare for the counterattack on the primordial world. This was the origin of Chaos Heaven. After Chaos Heaven was established, the top experts of the immeasurable universe obtained an effective organization, and the counterattack on the primordial world began on a larger scale. It was also from that moment on that the Chaos Sea managed to defend and launch counterattacks on the primordial world easily. They even obtained a glorious result that caused the death of several immortal ancestors, forming the great tribulation of the boundless Chaos Sea that the primordial world was incomparably afraid of. Initially, the Chaos Sea was inferior to the distant universe in terms of the number of experts at the immortal ancestor realm. However, after 300 Primeval eras and 19 Chaos Sea tribulations, the primordial world was already weaker than the Chaos Sea. After understanding the situation of the Chaos Heaven, Kui Heng learned more about the boundless chaos universe from Venerable Master Ju. For example, the division of strength between the various universes, what kind of experts there were, what kind of civilizations there were, how the Chaos Heaven managed these universes, and so on. Venerable Master Ju answered these questions in detail. Kui Heng listened quietly at the side. As he understood this information deeper, his cultivation realm also quietly increased. Especially on the spectrum of the River of Time, he had further reduced the scouring of the River of Time on himself. Moreover, he could look down on more of the River of Time, and his investigation of the past was more detailed and hidden. However, these improvements did not cause any phenomena. Kui Heng was still as usual, and Venerable Master Ju did not discover any abnormalities. His realm was after all, much weaker. If a quasi-immortal emperor was present, he would more or less be able to sense that Kui Heng's aura was already very different from before. A moment later, Venerable Master Ju ended his explanations and said respectfully, Immortal Lord, do you have anything else to ask? That's enough. Kui Heng nodded slightly and smiled. Actually, he still had some questions that involved the secrets of the various universes that he did not ask. However, he only needed to send some fake selves to investigate. There was no need to ask Venerable Master Ju one by one. Immortal Lord, if you don't have any other instructions, I'll take my leave first. Venerable Master Ju bowed again. To him, the psychological pressure of talking to Kui Heng alone was still a little great. After all, this was very likely an immortal emperor expert. Wait a moment. Kui Heng smiled. At the same time, he raised his right hand and flicked his finger gently. Immediately, a long sword appeared out of thin air. Then, a bright silver color appeared on the sword edge and flowed like water. Take this sword. Kui Heng let the sword float in front of Venerable Master Ju. This sword contains the power of time. It can give you a chance to escape when facing an immortal emperor. Consider it a gift of gratitude for answering my questions. This. Venerable Master Ju's eyes widened as he looked at the sword in extreme shock. He felt the huge power contained in it and his entire body trembled. Then, he shook his head repeatedly and said, "Lord Immortal, this is too precious." Although Kui Heng did not infuse much power from the long sword, and he only emphasized on its life-saving ability, in his perception, this was clearly a supreme treasure with endless power. This long sword was like a treasure brewed from the river of time. Every bit of power carried the power of time and had unbelievable uses. As everyone knew, the power of time could only be used by experts at the quasi-immortal emperor realm. In other words, as long as he held this sword, he would possess power equivalent to a quasi-immortal emperor. Even if he could not compare to a true quasi-immortal emperor, it was enough for him to look down on all his peers. Such a supreme treasure was actually given to him? This surprise came too suddenly. Venerable Master Ju did not even dare to accept it. 712 Her figure in the past, 2. 712 Her figure in the past, 2. Is it valuable? Kui Heng shook his head and chuckled when he heard this. He did not explain. Instead, he continued to flick his finger a few times. Then, thousands of identical swords appeared out of thin air and floated in front of Venerable Master Ju. The bright silver light on the thousands of swords shone on each other as if they were connected, forming a miniature river of time that displayed the profundity of the power of time. Venerable Master Ju was completely stunned this time. He originally thought that the reason why this sword appeared out of thin air was because Kui Heng had taken it out of his storage space. But from the looks of it, that didn't seem to be the case. These thousands of swords that floated in the air had all appeared out of thin air. Moreover, at the same time, the surrounding heaven-earth essence chi and basic matter particles suddenly decreased. Clearly, these swords were all refined on the spot. This guess left Venerable Master Ju dumbfounded and speechless. He was shocked to the extreme. Refining so many long swords that contained the power of quasi-immortal emperors out of thin air was really too shocking. It completely exceeded Venerable Master Ju's imagination. This made him even more certain that Kui Heng was definitely an immortal emperor expert. Choose any one. Kui Heng smiled. To him, he could create as many swords as he wanted. It was effortless, but to any invincible immortal king, each one could be considered a supreme treasure. Yes, Lord Immortal. Venerable Master Ju could only nod dumbly. If he still refused in this situation, he would not know how to appreciate favors. In the end, he chose the long sword at the beginning and carefully held it in his hand. Then, he bowed respectfully to Kui Heng and said, "Thank you, Lord Immortal." "There's no need to thank me. This is a gift you deserve." Kui Heng nodded and said, "Go. I'll take my leave." Venerable Master Ju bowed and left the palace. Kui Heng did not leave the palace. He raised his perspective and instantly transcended the universe. Around him was an endless chaos sea that surged. The boundless universe floated and sank, and below was the vast river of time, as if it would never stop flowing. The gains this time are more than expected. I should have completed more than 60% of my early stage return to void cultivation. Kui Heng estimated his current cultivation realm. However, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to obtain such a huge improvement in the future. Be it Feng Sheng or Wei Ju, they both gave me information that I didn't know about before. Now that I have a deeper understanding of the boundless chaos sea and the primordial world, even if there are invincible immortal kings for me to scry in the future, it will probably be difficult to gain anything. If I still want to improve at such speeds, I'm afraid I'll have to change my target to a quasi-immortal emperor. And such an expert is either in the core universe of the Chaos Sea or in the primordial world. Be it the core of the Chaos Sea or the primordial world, there are experts at the immortal emperor realm. There are even experts from the immortal ancestor realm. The danger level is definitely not small. If I only conduct a simple exploration of the immeasurable universe. Even if I can step into the mid-stage return to void realm, It will take a long time. It's best to explore the primordial world at the same time. Kui Heng quickly made a decision. Next, he planned to cultivate on multiple paths. While investigating the unknown secrets of the immeasurable universe through his fake selves, he also headed to the core universe of the Chaos Sea and the primordial world to investigate. His fake selves were everywhere. Even if he did different things in different places at the same time, it was very normal. Before that, there's something else I have to confirm. Kui Heng suddenly thought of something and sent a voice transmission to Hong Fuguei, who was in another palace. Fuguei, come to my place. Hong Fuguei, who was busy, immediately put down what he was doing and rushed to the side hall where Kui Heng was. Disciple greets teacher, Hong Fuguei said extremely respectfully. There's something I want to ask you. Kui Heng nodded slightly and said to Hong Fuguei, do you still remember when and where you last saw your junior sister? Teacher, are you talking about junior sister Hengxia? Hong Fuguei asked first before answering. I remember, of course I remember. Very good. Kui Heng nodded and said, bring me over to take a look. He planned to investigate the past of that place to check Jiang Chichi's past situation and try to find her whereabouts. In the immortal land in the middle of the Silver Disk Star Sea, Kui Heng and Hong Fuguei arrived at a wasteland. Hong Fuguei and Jiang Chichi had once met here. However, at that time, Hong Fuguei only knew that her name was Jiang Hengxia, and she came from the same galaxy as him. He did not know that she was actually his junior sister. Teacher, I met her here back then. Hong Fuguei pointed at a mountain in the distance and said, at that time, I was cultivating here, and the aura of power on my body attracted her attention. All right. Kui Heng nodded slightly and flew towards the mountain with Hong Fuguei. When they arrived at the place where Hong Fuguei used to be, his eyes narrowed slightly, and a bright silver light began to flicker in his eyes. From the perspective of time, everything that this mountain had experienced in the past years appeared, condensing into clear images that were reflected in Kui Heng's eyes. Investigating the past experiences of such dead things was completely effortless for Kui Heng. It was not difficult at all. Therefore, he quickly returned the scene to the time when Hong Fuguei and Jiang Chichi met here. After thousands of years, Kui Heng finally saw the girl who had once called him Big Brother immortal again. Although he had already asked Hong Fuguei to materialize Jiang Chichi's appearance at that time, watching the image and seeing the figure in time with his own eyes still had a different feeling. At that time, Jiang Chichi was already at the 7th True World realm. He didn't know what her goal was, but she was looking for Juntian. However, Kui Heng had also seen Juntian's past experience and realized that he had never met Jiang Chichi. This was also what Kui Heng was puzzled about earlier. Now that he saw Jiang Chichi's figure with his own eyes, he had an answer in his heart. As expected, she went to the primordial world. Kui Heng sighed softly. Previously, after he realized that Jiang Chichi was no longer in this universe, he guessed that she had gone to the primordial world. Now, through this figure in the past, he realized that Jiang Chichi possessed an aura of power from the primordial world. From its nature, it should be a treasure of a high grade. The effect was related to spatial teleportation, and it was very likely a secret treasure used to protect one's life. Moreover, from the level of strength, it had already reached the immortal king realm. At that time, Jiang Chichi, who was only at the 7th True World realm, actually had an immortal king-level treasure on her. How did a treasure with the power of the primordial world appear in this universe? Kui Heng frowned slightly and thought to himself, how did Chichi obtain a treasure of this level? Immortal King Haojuan's past experiences don't have anything about Jiang Chichi either. This is also very strange. Logically speaking, since an immortal king-level power has appeared in this universe, it's impossible for him, the heavens will, to not know anything. He felt that there was something strange about this matter. It was not ordinary. Perhaps Jiang Chichi was hiding a lot of secrets. It just so happens that I have to go to the primordial world to explore next. I can also take the opportunity to investigate Chichi's whereabouts. Kui Heng made a decision in his heart. As long as I find her, all my doubts will naturally be answered. 713 Descending to the Primordial World, Great Harvest. 713 Descending to the primordial world, Great Harvest. The continent where Emperor Wu was located did not have an immortal ancestor. It was controlled by an immortal emperor called Enchantment. Therefore, after discovering that there was an abnormality in a universe in the boundless chaos sea, his first reaction was to look for immortal Emperor Enchantment to update him and discuss a specific plan. After all, it was very likely that the universe involved a Heaven's Will who had grasped the power of Heaven Heart Light. If they could not kill him in time, in a billion years, this would be a Heaven's Will who had grasped the power of Heaven Heart phenomenon. At that time, it would be a disaster for the entire primordial world. However, when Emperor Wu brought Yang Qing to the Shungan Palace where immortal Emperor Enchantment was, they were rejected at the entrance. The immortal child guarding the door told them that immortal Emperor Enchantment had been invited by immortal Emperor Pinkang's envoy not long ago to attend a meeting organized by 3 immortal ancestors. He should be back within 1,000 years. A meeting with 3 immortal ancestors? Emperor Wu was stunned when he heard this. He asked curiously, in the past, the immortal ancestor meetings were always held before the descent of the Great Chaos Sea calamity. Now, it's clearly not time yet. Under normal circumstances, there would be 12 to 18 Primeval eras between 2 chaos calamities. It had only been a little more than 10 Primeval eras since the last chaos calamity. There were still more than 8 billion years before the minimum period of 12 Primeval eras. Could it be that because of the abnormality in the boundless chaos sea, the chaos calamity might start in advance? The news that a Heaven-Earth saint had died earlier was true? For a moment, many thoughts flashed through Emperor Wu's heart, and an inexplicable sense of unease surged in his heart. Then, he cupped his hands and said to the immortal child guarding the door, "Thank you, immortal child, for telling us where immortal Emperor Enchantment is. We'll take our leave." The immortal child guarding the Shungan Palace was usually immortal Emperor Enchantment's trusted aide. He might even be a legacy disciple. His identity was extraordinary, so he had to be treated with respect. After leaving the Shungan Palace, Yang Qing asked anxiously, "Master, what should we do now? It's very likely that there's a Heaven's Will in that universe that has grasped the power of Heaven Heart Light. Junior brother Feng's life and death are unknown. Let's look for immortal Emperor Tianshui," Emperor Wu said in a low voice. One of his teachers had once saved immortal Emperor Tianshui's life a long time ago, so this immortal emperor took good care of him and even personally refined a supreme treasure like the lost water treasure mirror for him. As immortal Emperor Tianshui was not in charge of the specific matters of this continent, the palace she lived in was not on land. Instead, it was overseas. Emperor Wu and Yang Qing quickly crossed the continent and traversed the sea to the True Water Divine Palace where immortal Emperor Tianshui was. The True Water Divine Palace was built on the clouds and floated in the air. As soon as the two of them arrived, a young woman in a green dress flew out of the palace and smiled. "Emperor Wu, how have you been?" "Greetings, Emperor Qing. It's been a long time." Emperor Wu cupped his hands and smiled. This young woman was also a quasi-immortal emperor and was immortal Emperor Tianshui's personal disciple. She was usually in charge of the various matters of the True Water Divine Palace and was deeply trusted by immortal Emperor Tianshui. "I'm no longer an emperor in this world. You can just call me Qing Shu." The young woman shook her head and smiled faintly. "Emperor Wu, you look like you're in a hurry. Are you looking for my master?" "That's right." Emperor Wu nodded and said, "Please inform immortal Emperor Tianshui that I have an extremely important situation to report." "Master is not in the palace." Qing Shu shook his head gently and said, "Not long ago, immortal Emperor Pinkang sent an envoy over and invited Master to attend a meeting with 3 immortal ancestors. She probably won't return for 1,000 years." Emperor Wu fell silent when he heard this. This situation was exactly the same as the Shungan Palace. He smiled bitterly and said, "I just came from the Shungan Palace. I didn't expect the situation to be the same here." At this moment, he was really helpless and began to feel anxious. The myriad heavens palace that was in charge of invading that universe was under the jurisdiction of Emperor Wu. Now that such a thing had happened, he had to be responsible to the end. Otherwise, Once the heavens will who had grasped the power of heaven heart light grew to an existence comparable to an immortal emperor or even grasped the power of heaven heart phenomenon, he would definitely be unable to escape the blame and would be severely punished. Originally, he felt that with immortal emperor and Chen and immortal emperor Tianshui behind him, the situation would not be too bad. However, he never expected that something would really happen now. These two immortal emperors were actually not around. Why did the immortal ancestors' meeting have to be held at this time? Could it really be related to the abnormality in the boundless chaos sea? If what Emperor Wu needs to report is urgent, can you tell me first? I'll relay it to my master when she returns. Qing Shu smiled. This Emperor Wu hesitated for a moment, but in his helplessness, he could only say, "It's like this. The reason is that the heaven will of a universe from the myriad heavens palace under my rule was killed." He briefly explained what had happened in that universe. Qing Shu's expression became solemn as she said in a low voice, "It actually involves a heaven's will that has grasped the power of heaven heart light. This is indeed a very serious matter. It's also very suspicious that a universe has been completely hidden on the space-time spectrum. Perhaps a heaven-earth saint has really died in the boundless chaos sea. This is a very important matter. However, there's still time to wait for 1,000 years. Emperor Wu, you don't have to be too anxious. When Master returns, I'll inform her immediately." "Thank you." Emperor Wu cupped his hands and bowed, leaving only a bitter smile on his face. It might not be too late to deal with the heaven's will that had grasped the power of heaven heart light 1,000 years later, but the hidden universe was the key to verifying if there was really a heaven-earth saint who had died. It would definitely be too late 1,000 years later. That was the best opportunity for him to fight for a reduction in punishment for his master. 714 Descending to the Primordial World. Great Harvest. 2. 714 Descending to the Primordial World. Great Harvest. 2. Seeing Emperor Wu's expression, Qing Shu hesitated for a moment before sighing softly. "Forget it. Immortal Emperor Chengfang has done Master a favor after all. You're so anxious because you want to reduce Immortal Emperor Chengfang's punishment. I believe Master will agree with your actions. In that case, I'll use the Supreme Treasure to investigate the recent abnormalities of the River of Time." The immortal Emperor Chengfang she was talking about was the master of Emperor Wu. During the 16th Chaos Calamity, because of his mistake, an immortal ancestor died and he was punished to suppress the eternal calamity. He could not be released. Emperor Wu had been conscientious for so many years because he wanted to establish a career so that he could reduce the punishment of his master, immortal Emperor Chengfang. At the very least, he wanted to reduce the punishment to the extent that he could be released before his lifespan was exhausted. However, the crimes committed by immortal Emperor Chengfang were too great. It was already extremely benevolent for him to be able to live. It was not something that ordinary achievements could offset at all. This time, it was suspected that a heaven-earth saint had died in the boundless chaos sea. It was the best opportunity for the primordial world to counterattack. If he could successfully verify this matter, it would definitely be a huge achievement. It should be able to greatly reduce immortal Emperor Chengfang's punishment. Originally, Emperor Wu was already in despair. Now that he heard Qing Shu's words, he was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you, thank you. Tai Wu is endlessly grateful. Back then, immortal Emperor Chengfang had done me a lot of favors. This can be considered as repaying his kindness on behalf of Master. There's no need to thank me." Qing Shu shook her head gently and said, "Please follow me to the side hall to rest. I need to go to the meditation room to activate that time treasure." With that, she turned around and walked towards the True Water Divine Palace. Emperor Wu and Yang Qing hurriedly followed her to a side hall in the palace. After Qing Shu placed the two of them in the side hall, she arrived at the deepest part of the main hall. She opened the restrictions here and an aqua-blue door of light immediately appeared. Its surface was suffused with sparkling water light, and time could be vaguely seen flowing. "Greetings, Senior." Qing Shu bowed to the door of light extremely respectfully, as if she was bowing to an elder. As soon as she finished speaking, A bronze mirror flew out of the door of light and slowly landed in front of Qing Shu. The space around it distorted slightly and flickered with illusory light and shadows, as if it was blurring the lines of the past and present. This was a time treasure that immortal Emperor Tianshui had personally refined and nurtured for hundreds of Primeval eras. It had the effect of directly observing all the abnormalities in the river of time for a certain period of time. The lost water treasure mirror refined by immortal Emperor Tianshui back then was actually a simplified version of this time treasure. The effect of this authentic item was much stronger than the lost water treasure mirror. It could check the entire river of time, and any abnormality could be clearly seen. In the entire True Water God Palace, only immortal Emperor Tianshui and Qing Shu were qualified to use it. However, Qing Shu was only a quasi-immortal emperor after all. If she used a supreme treasure of this level, it would cause a huge consumption, and she would also mobilize the power of time that exceeded the limits of her control. This might cause a backlash from the river of time. Therefore, she only decided to use this treasure of time to help Emperor Wu investigate the recent abnormalities of the river of time. She had thought about it carefully and was even prepared to suffer the backlash from the river of time. This was naturally not because of Emperor Wu's request. Instead, she wanted to repay immortal Emperor Cheng Fang's kindness on behalf of her master, immortal Emperor Tianshui. After inviting out this time treasure, Qing Shu took out 3 more incense sticks and lit them. He bowed 9 times respectfully to the bronze mirror and asked extremely sincerely, "Senior, please reflect the past and present and investigate all the abnormalities in the river of time in the past 10,000 years." This time treasure had been nurtured by immortal Emperor Tianshui for a very long time and already had its own spirituality. To immortal Emperor Tianshui, this did not affect him much, so he did not destroy this spirituality. However, if a junior like Qing Shu wanted to use the power of this supreme treasure, she had to take care of her scattered emotions and request respectfully. After the incense was lit and the kowtow ceremony was completed, a bright silver light suddenly appeared on the bronze surface. It flowed in the void like river water and quickly enveloped her. At the same time, Qing Shu felt her perspective suddenly increase. She repeatedly rushed out of the river of time and could look down at the bright silver river that flowed from the distant past to the uncertain future. This was the first time she had used this time treasure, and it was also the first time she had looked down at the river of time from a perspective similar to an immortal emperor. She could not help but exclaim in her heart. However, she quickly regained her normal rationality and hurriedly began to observe the abnormal situations in the river of time. At this moment, the power of the heavenly light treasure mirror had already begun to appear. As long as it discovered an abnormal time fluctuation within 10,000 years, it would glow red in Qing Shu's eyes. The scarlet lights were very eye-catching in the bright silver river of time. They could be seen clearly without any effort. There are actually more than 1,000. Qing Shui could not help but be surprised. It was common knowledge that although quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors had grasped the power of time, in order to avoid being devoured, they rarely really used time techniques. She did not expect there to be so many abnormal time fluctuations in just 10,000 years. Let's start from the nearest time, Qing Shu thought. After Kui Heng arranged the matters of that universe, he headed to the primordial world. Under normal circumstances, people from the boundless chaos sea could not directly enter the primordial world. That was because the outermost layer of the primordial world had remnant divine power. It would automatically screen all living beings with different cultivation foundations from the primordial world and kill them. Of course, to this day, the mysteries of this layer of protection had long been seen through by the experts of the boundless chaos sea. As long as they used a secret technique, they could ignore this layer of defense and enter the primordial world. 715 Descending to the primordial world, Great Harvest, 3. 715 Descending to the primordial world, Great Harvest, 3. However, if he used this secret technique to forcefully enter the primordial world, it would cause a large-scale nomological turmoil. It was equivalent to telling all the living beings in the primordial world that someone had entered. Therefore, generally speaking, This secret technique could only be useful when launching the Great Chaos Calamity. For example, spies like Fang Jian and Chonghe had taken advantage of the Great Chaos Calamity to sneak into the primordial world. After Kui Heng obtained this secret technique, he made some subtle changes and it became more suitable for immortal cultivators to use. Moreover, through the characteristics of a return to void cultivator that had transcended the universe, it achieved a better effect. He could enter the primordial world silently without causing any abnormalities. However, for safety's sake, Kui Heng chose a relatively empty sea to descend. Therefore, after he came to the primordial world, what he saw was an endless sea and an extremely high sky. This was a place far from the 9 continents and also far from the residence of the overseas rogue immortals. Almost no one would appear here. It's really infinitely vast. Kui Heng could not help but exclaim. However, something that shocked him even more quickly happened. The great Tao laws of the primordial world were actually so clear that one could instantly comprehend them as long as they sensed them. He had just arrived in the primordial world, but he had already comprehended a large number of unfamiliar primordial laws. This meant that a large amount of unknown information was gained, enough for him to approach the omniscient level, and his cultivation realm naturally began to rise rapidly. Kui Heng's mind raced as he immediately made a decision. He said in a low voice, "Where's the yellow-scarved strongman?" In the next moment, the early-stage return to Void Realm yellow-scarved strongman appeared and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Master Immortal. Guard me," Kui Heng ordered the yellow-scarved strongman. Then, he entered a cultivation state. Kui Heng could clearly feel that this was a huge opportunity. This was the first time he had entered the primordial world and come into contact with the great Tao laws here. This also meant that this was a huge bag of experience points for him. Originally, his cultivation at the early stage return to Void Realm was already close to 70%. With this opportunity, it was completely possible for him to directly break through to the mid-stage return to Void Realm. At that time, the process of investigating the primordial world would be even safer. He could not let go of this opportunity. As expected, with a large amount of comprehension of the unknown laws of the primordial world, Kui Heng's early stage return to void cultivation, which had only reached slightly more than 60%, quickly reached a critical point. If he continued forward, he would reach the mid-stage return to Void Realm. At this moment, the increase in his power with the time spectrum began to appear. Kui Heng felt his perspective rise again, leaving the primordial world and transcending the river of time. Then, he realized that an illusory figure was swaying on the river of time, as if it was searching for something. 716 Midstage Return to Void Realm, standing in the present, influencing the past. 716 Midstage Return to Void Realm, standing in the present, influencing the past. In Kui Heng's perception, the illusory figure was wandering around the river of time, stopping from time to time. He observed the location of the illusory figure and realized that there were relatively obvious changes in time in these places. It's looking for a place where the flow of time is abnormal. Kui Heng quickly made a judgment in his heart, and then a strange expression appeared on his face. It's still a quasi-immortal emperor from the primordial world. Could it be looking for clues of me hiding the traces of that universe? If that was really the case, then this illusory figure would only waste its effort. The effect of the Eon Light Evasion spell was extremely powerful. Even if his cultivation had not reached half of the early stage Void Return realm, it was enough to hide from the perception of an immortal emperor. Although this illusory figure was intertwined with a large amount of time power which was similar to the time power of an immortal emperor, it was clearly using external objects to investigate. It was impossible to find the whereabouts of his universe. Since I met you, it's just that your luck is too bad. Kui Heng was currently in the process of breaking through to the mid-stage return to Void Realm. Next, it would definitely cause a violent fluctuation in the river of time. From the looks of it, this quasi-immortal emperor would definitely suffer the backlash of the river of time at that time. This could not be helped. He could only say that this person was too unlucky. The phenomenon of a return to void cultivator breaking through rarely appeared on the physical level. It was more manifested in the river of time. The originally calm river of time suddenly rippled, especially the parts that symbolizes the past. It was even more violent because of Kui Heng's breakthrough. At this moment, Kui Heng's figure reflected in the river of time seemed to have sensed something and looked up. There was Kui Heng, who had just walked out of the beginner's space, Kui Heng, who was collecting the 7 emotions of all living beings, Kui Heng, who had left Daoju Star to explore more unknowns, and Kui Heng, who had established a nomological order and stepped onto the path to the soul formation realm. As long as it was Kui Heng in the past, he would look at the sky. He had an inexplicable mysterious feeling in his heart, but he did not know what it was. This feeling flashed past like an illusion. However, Kui Heng could not ignore this strange feeling at any time. However, because his cultivation realm at that time was limited, he could only remember it in his heart for the time being and investigate later. The current Kui Heng could clearly feel that he had already established a connection with his past self. Although this connection had not reached the point where he could attack the past at will, if his normal trajectory in the past was disturbed, he could directly cross the river of time and attack the past. If the fate of someone who was entangled with his existence was affected in the past, he could also sense it and could cross time to attack. In a sense, this meant that he really had the means to cross space and time. If he continued to cultivate in this direction, sooner or later, he would have the ability to attack the past at will. One day, it was even possible to directly unify his past self in the timeline and achieve the uniqueness of the past timeline, thereby existing in the present and the past at the same time. Now, the past. There seems to be an absolute present on the time spectrum. In front of the present is the future, and behind it is the past. But why does this present exist? At the same time that Kui Heng obtained a breakthrough in his cultivation realm, a new doubt appeared in his heart. He thought to himself, I reckon I have to cultivate to a higher realm to understand this. If I'm not wrong, the direction of improvement for the mid-stage return to Void Realm should be to increase my influence on the past as much as possible and even occupy the past timeline. After sorting out his thoughts, Kui Heng began to check his current state. He had already completed his breakthrough and entered the mid-stage return to Void Realm. His life essence had been further sublimated. Although he was still in a state that transcended the universe, he could sense more of the situation in the universe. Countless great Tao laws and various events in the universe would automatically appear in his perception. He would learn new knowledge every moment. This also allowed his control over the great Tao laws to become stronger and stronger. He could already control and formulate the great Tao laws of many universes at the same time. As for his dharmic powers, they were countless times stronger than when he was at the early stage return to Void Realm. It was almost comparable to a true immortal emperor. In addition, Kui Heng also realized that he had already stepped on the surface of the river of time. His feet and calves, which were originally submerged in the river of time, had already left the water and started stepping on it. This meant that from now on, he would no longer be directly corroded by the river of time. He only needed to withstand the subtle corrosion brought about by the river of time as it flowed under his feet. Moreover, the effect of the power of time on him weakened again. Ordinary immortal emperors would probably not be able to affect him at all. Such a huge improvement naturally caused a considerable commotion in the river of time. Just as Kui Heng was sublimating to the extreme, almost all the quasi-immortal emperors who had touched the secrets of time felt the abnormality of the river of time. Many people had never seen such an abnormality in the river of time before. They could only feel that this abnormality was definitely very critical and was very likely to have a huge impact. However, they knew nothing about the abnormality and did not know what had happened. Therefore, many people felt their hearts skip a beat. In order to understand the abnormality as much as possible and to reassure themselves, they extended their perception into the time spectrum to check. 717 Midstage returned to Void Realm, standing in the present, influencing the past. 2. 717 Midstage returned to Void Realm, standing in the present, influencing the past. 2. Then, they were incomparably shocked to discover that this calm river of time was like the rising tide of a river, becoming vast and mighty. The water flow was also very rapid, as if it was enveloped by some special force. However, no matter how these quasi-immortal emperors investigated, they did not discover the source of this abnormality. It was as if the river of time had moved on its own without any external factors. However, Qing Shu, who was investigating the recent abnormalities in the river of time, attracted everyone's attention. At this moment, Qing Shu was on the verge of collapse. With Qing Shu's current cultivation realm, it was already very difficult for GER to use the time treasure to investigate the river of time. Even in her normal state, the river of time was already very dangerous. She could suffer the backlash of the river of time at any time. When Kui Heng broke through to the mid-stage return to Void Realm, he caused a violent commotion in the river of time, almost alarming all the quasi-immortal emperors in the primordial world and the boundless chaos sea. Such a huge commotion was like a calm river suddenly turning into a raging, vast river. Qing Shu, who was investigating, was stunned on the spot. The special characteristics marked by the effect of the heavenly light treasure mirror disappeared in an instant, and the protective light that enveloped her collapsed. Immediately after, there was a huge impact of time power. There was a lot of time power intertwined with the power of a quasi-immortal emperor, so she was even more affected by the impact of time. Just the first wave of impact almost caused her immortal body to collapse. Fortunately, the heavenly light treasure mirror was an immortal emperor-level treasure after all. Although the initial protective light had collapsed, a new protective light quickly crossed the river of time and enveloped Qing Shu, barely providing some protection. However, under such intense turbulence of the river of time, the protective light did not last long this time and quickly collapsed again. Qing Shu was horrified. Looking at the surging river of time around her, she could not understand this sudden change at all. What's going on? What's going on? Why did such a violent commotion suddenly appear in the river of time? I have to leave this place immediately. At this moment, her only thought was to leave the time spectrum and return to the True Water Divine Palace. However, the surging river of time did not give her a chance at all. The overly chaotic power of time made it impossible for her to return at all. She could not even move. Once she moved, she would be washed away by a huge amount of time power, and it was very likely that she would die on the spot. At this moment, the quasi-immortal emperors who had come here because of the abnormality of the river of time also discovered Qing Shui and recognized her as immortal Emperor Qian Shui's personal disciple. Hence, many quasi-immortal emperors who wanted to form a good relationship with immortal Emperor Qian Shui took out their treasures and tried to help her. They worked together to help Qing Shu lure away a portion of the surging power of time so that the power of the heavenly light treasure could have a chance to activate again. With the help of more than 10 quasi-immortal emperors, the heavenly light treasure mirror finally erected a protection barrier for Qing Shu again. The surging power of time also weakened a little because of the guidance of many quasi-immortal emperors. She immediately seized this opportunity and left the level of the river of time under the protection of the heavenly light treasure mirror, returning to the True Water Divine Palace in the True Water Divine Palace. However, the moment Qing Shu left, the power of time that had just been barely guided suddenly erupted, shocking the group of quasi-immortal emperors into quickly retreating. At the same time, a huge amount of time power surged down like a waterfall and actually traced back to the primordial world's True Water Heavenly Palace. It was like a stream of light that descended from the void and ruthlessly slashed at the heavenly light treasure. Clang! The heavenly light treasure mirror suddenly trembled violently, emitting a sound like metal clashing. A lightning-like crack appeared on the originally smooth mirror, and the mirror itself became dim. There was even green rust at the edge, and the spiritual Tao runes plummeted. Clearly, it had suffered extremely huge damage. Qing Shu, who had just escaped death, seemed to have all the strength in her body drained in an instant. Her entire body collapsed to the ground. Her face was pale, and her eyes were empty. She was completely lifeless. Why did this happen? How can this be? What happened in the river of time? In the side hall of the True Water Divine Palace, Emperor Wu's face turned pale. Just now, although his main body had been here, his perception had also gone to the river of time to investigate the abnormality, wanting to see if there was the whereabouts of the hidden universe. However, he did not expect to see the scene of the river of time turning turbulent. The extremely violent power of time and Qing Shu, who had almost died from the backlash, shocked Emperor Wu. Even if he'd returned safely, he still felt a lingering fear. Yang Qing, who was at the side, discovered the abnormality on Emperor Wu's expression and hurriedly asked, "Master, what's wrong?" I vaguely sensed that there seemed to be some abnormality in the river of time just now. Is it because of this? That's right. Emperor Wu nodded, and his expression became incomparably solemn. He said in a low voice, "I'm afraid something extremely serious has happened." Under normal circumstances, even experts like Immortal Emperor and Chen or Immortal Emperor Tianshui might not be able to cause such a huge commotion. It's actually so serious. Yang Qing could not help but exclaim, could it be that an immortal ancestor has attacked? In the end, he was only an invincible immortal king. Although he had already cultivated to the peak and could vaguely sense the mysteries of time, it was only a vague feeling and was not clear. He did not expect the time turbulence he had sensed just now to be so serious. Immortal ancestors shouldn't be that strong, but they aren't weak either. From the extent of the commotion this time, it's at least a grand completion realm heavenless immortal emperor. Emperor Wu clearly became nervous and said in a low voice, "Perhaps this is the reason why the immortal emperors suddenly want to hold a meeting. Perhaps at a level that we don't know about, the battle between the primordial world and the immeasurable chaos sea has already begun. The immortal emperor realm was the cultivation of the heavenless realm. This realm was divided into the initial, minor completion, grand completion, and perfection realm. There was a world of difference between different levels of immortal emperors. The immortal emperors who had been in charge of managing the 9 continents were all in the initial stage of the heavenless realm. For example, Immortal Emperor and Chen, who was in charge of managing this continent, was only in the initial heavenless realm. Immortal Emperor Tianshui was slightly stronger than Immortal Emperor and Chen, but he was only close to minor completion. Immortal Emperor Pingkang, who had sent an envoy to invite Immortal Emperor and Chen to the meeting, and Immortal Emperor Chengfang, the master of Emperor Wu, were at the grand completion stage of the heavenless realm. "Master, what should we do next?" Yang Qing asked worriedly. "We'll wait here now." Emperor Wu glanced in the direction of the main hall of the True Water Divine Palace and sighed. Emperor Qing was washed by a large amount of time power in the river of time. "We can't leave just like that." "Then," he said, after confirming that Emperor Qing is fine, "I plan to personally go to the place where the immortal emperors are. Even if I have to face punishment, I have to explain the situation of that universe to the immortal emperors and immortal ancestors." But didn't they say that the Immortal Emperor Conference would be sealed off from all contact with the outside world? "Are you going to barge in?" Yang Qing said worriedly. This was the information he had obtained from the Shungan Palace earlier. This was why they had no way of informing the immortal emperors about this through a long-distance message. "This is an urgent matter, so we can't care so much," Emperor Wu said in a low voice. "This is my only chance. Even if they punish me later, it's enough as long as they credit Master for my achievement." 718 The Source of Life and True Spirit. 718 The Source of Life and True Spirit. After ending his breakthrough, Kui Heng had already returned to his normal state. He walked on the vast sea, his goal being the continent closest to him. On the surface, he looked like an ordinary overseas rogue immortal. The primordial world is really vast. Although I've already broken through to the mid-stage return to Void Realm, there are still too many unknown great Tao laws here. It can continue to increase my cultivation. Kui Heng could not help but sigh with emotion in his heart. The universe I was in earlier can't be compared to this place at all. Is this the world created in the beginning? After coming to the primordial world, he deeply felt the vastness and depth of this world. How powerful must one be to create a world like this? However, after the emotional sigh, what followed was worry. According to my previous estimation, the cultivation of the return to void stage definitely involves retracing time. If I have to trace back to the beginning of time, I'm afraid I can't avoid seeing the beginning and end. At that time, what should I do? What kind of attitude do the two of them have towards living beings like me? Has someone already done this before me? If there are already precursors at the beginning of time, what will their attitude towards the future generations be? In terms of selfishness, The situation is probably not optimistic. Thinking of this, Kui Heng could not help but fall into deep thought. He once again felt the difficulty of the path of immortal cultivation. After breaking through to the mid-stage return to Void Realm, he could basically determine his next cultivation direction. This also meant that at the later parts of the return to Void Realm, whether he could improve further would probably not only depend on his cultivation process, but also on the attitude of some of the predecessors. At the end of the return to Void Realm, the prerequisite for the Tao integration is that one must know everything and be omnipotent. It's not easy to reach such a level. Kui Heng gently exhaled and thought to himself, right now, I should complete my mid-stage return to void cultivation first. At the same time, I should try my best to understand the situation of the high-level immortal emperors and immortal ancestors. This can be considered as preparation for retracing time in the future. I'll start from the immortal Advent continent closest to here. The immortal ancestor of this continent has long died. The strongest is only an immortal emperor who has just entered the heavenless realm. I can still deal with him. Although Fengsheng's continent was not the immortal Advent continent, and he did not know much about the other continents, he definitely knew some basic information. Kui Heng had learned about the location of the immortal Advent continent, the immortal emperor in charge, and the general situation. Since he had already decided on where to go, Kui Heng no longer hesitated. He immediately appeared in the outer sea area of the immortal Advent continent. After arriving at the outer sea area of this continent, he immediately felt that this place was very different from the sea area he was originally in. The sea area he was in previously was far from the continent. The laws and principles were in a chaotic natural state. However, it was different in this nearland sea. The laws, dharma, and logos seemed to have been divided into many regions. The laws and principles of the different regions were clearly different, and their focus was different. For example, some focused on water, some on life, and some on transformation. With a slight perception, Kui Heng discovered that there were actually many forces standing in this sea. Every different nomological area was under the jurisdiction of a force. Just this nearland sea region alone has 19,032 factions. They are all different. The strongest has traces of an immortal emperor, and the weakest only has experts at the immortal monarch realm. There are also many medium-level immortal king factions. The difference is really huge. This sea area is at most 1/5 of the sea area around the continent. There are already so many experts, and there will only be more experts on the continent. The strength of the primordial world is really extraordinary. Although the overall strength of the boundless chaos sea was not weaker than the primordial world, and it was even stronger than the primordial world on some levels, the immeasurable universe was too scattered. The primordial world only had 9 continents. Compared to the immeasurable universe, the experts here were much more concentrated, so the impact on people was naturally stronger. Boom! At this moment, Kui Heng suddenly heard a loud bang in the distance. He looked in the direction of the voice and realized that layers of light were flashing in the distance. It was 2 unforgiving phenomena colliding with each other, causing all techniques to roar. The void trembled, the seawater surged violently, and the positions of countless laws distorted. These were 2 peak immortal kings fighting. At the same time, countless figures flew over from the direction of the battle between the 2 of them. Everyone's faces were filled with fear as they quickly fled. In fact, they were indeed running for their lives. Most of these people were immortal monarchs or ordinary immortal kings. If they stayed near the battlefield of the peak immortal kings, just the aftershock might destroy their bodies and souls. Faced with this situation, running away was clearly the best choice. Kui Heng naturally did not escape. He only stood here and quietly watched the battle between the 2 peak immortal kings. The huge impact naturally quickly spread to where he was. However, at the same time that the aftershock of these forces was about to reach Kui Heng, his existence suddenly changed, as if he had turned into a phantom, allowing the aftershock of these forces to pass through his body without any obstruction. The 2 peak immortal kings did not discover Kui Heng's existence at all. They were still attacking the other party with all their might, completely unaware that someone was observing them from the side. So it's because of a treasure that can help them break through to the level of an invincible immortal king. 719 The Source of Life and True Spirit, 2. 719 The Source of Life and True Spirit, 2. Kui Heng's eyes flickered with a bright silver color, and he instantly saw through the lives of these two peak immortal kings. The two of them were from the same sect when they were young. They've helped each other for dozens of primeval eras, but now, they've turned against each other. It's really a pity. Going back further, their previous lives were actually entangled with fate. In this life, the party who took the initiative to turn against each other happened to be the party who was harmed in their previous life. This discovery made him fall into deep thought. Kui Heng naturally did not stay behind to observe the battle between the two peak immortal kings to stop them. Instead, he wanted to test the effect of investigating the experiences of other living beings after breaking through to the mid-stage return to Void Realm. From the looks of it, his ability in this aspect had also greatly increased. Not only could he watch the experiences of a certain living being in this life, but he could also look at their previous life. Beyond that, was more lifetimes. It was only when one's past was traced back to the time that his true spirit was first born that he could no longer scry further. During this process, Kui Heng realized that no matter how many times a person reincarnated, as long as they had the same true spirit, there would always be some entanglements of fate that would create new opportunities in their next life. He could not understand the reason yet, but through his observation of the various signs of the birth of the true spirit, he had already discovered the source of the initial birth of the true spirit. Somewhere in the upper reaches of the river of time. After a true spirit was born at the source, it would float down the river of time and fall into different points in time, giving birth to different living beings. However, with Kui Heng's current realm and cultivation, he could not trace back to such an ancient era, so it was naturally difficult to see the original appearance of the source. In other words, be it the living beings of the primordial world or the boundless chaos sea, they were originally born from somewhere in the upper reaches of the river of time. Because that's the source of the true spirit, and the true spirit is the foundation of life. The place where the true spirit is born is the source of all living beings. Living beings. Was it the same for the supreme god of man back then? Kui Heng had a guess. This was not impossible. After all, the supreme god of man was born from the concept of living beings. It was normal for it to become the source of all living beings. But what about me? Kui Heng suddenly frowned and thought to himself, where's my source? Why can't I trace my past to my time on Earth, nor can I find any traces of Earth's existence? Just now, while speculating about the source of the living beings, he had also traced his existence and realized that his starting point was still the moment he walked out of the beginner's space. Not to mention the time on Earth, even the 300 years in the beginner's space could not be traced. This was a very strange phenomenon. Perhaps only by reaching a higher realm and further escaping the river of time and grasping more time techniques can I obtain an answer. Kui Heng thought to himself. To this day, he had inevitably begun to investigate the truth of his transmigration and the essence of his system. After all, if he did not know this, he would probably not be omniscient. With my current cultivation realm, I'm still unable to touch the final truth. I have to continue exploring. However, everything in the immortal king realm is already in my grasp. Without any mysteries, it's difficult to gain anything. Even a peak immortal king's understanding of the primordial world is relatively one-sided. It's best if I can find a quasi-immortal emperor next. The past experiences of such an expert should be able to increase my cultivation realm by a lot. After I fully investigated the quasi-immortal emperors, I'll look for immortal emperors who have just entered the heavenless realm and so on. I'll slowly cross to the minor completion, grand completion, and perfection realm before finally trying to investigate the immortal ancestors' past. During this process, I have to increase the level of the Eon Light evasion at the same time and hide myself with all my might. It's best if no one can discover me when I cultivate to the peak of the return to Void Realm. This should be much safer. Kui Heng once again formulated a cultivation plan for himself. Then, he ignored the two peak immortal kings and continued walking forward, passing by the surrounding immortal kings and immortal monarchs who were fleeing at an extremely fast speed. He also watched those people's past experiences. When Kui Heng left them far behind and arrived at the coast of the immortal Advent continent, he had already seen everyone's past experiences. To mid-stage return to void cultivators, even invincible immortal kings were like paintings drawn in books. All their experiences could be easily seen. Unfortunately, most of these people's cultivation realms were at the immortal monarch realm. The strongest was only a top immortal king. Their experiences could not bring Kui Heng much unknown information, so the increase in his cultivation realm was naturally very limited. Fortunately, these people knew more about the immortal Advent continent, allowing Kui Heng to learn a lot of information about it. The overall framework of this continent was different from the continent where Immortal Emperor and Chen was. There were no tightly structured and functional forces. Instead, the entire continent was managed in the form of a sect. The only ruler, Immortal Emperor Dongming, lived in Changming Palace and ruled over everything in the immortal continent. There were 9 high sects controlled by 9 quasi-immortal emperors, 36 middle sects and 72 lower sects controlled by invincible immortal kings, and 3,000 orthodox sects and 10,000 unorthodox sects controlled by peak immortal kings. On the immortal Advent continent, other than the Changming Palace and the 9 high sects, there was extremely intense competition among the other factions. The 36 middle sects had to face the challenges of the 72 lower sects at all times, and the 3,000 orthodox sects also had to face the challenge of 10,000 unorthodox sects at all times. Once they were defeated, the status of the entire sect would decrease, and it would affect their treatment and authority in all aspects. Therefore, the living environment of the cultivators on the immortal Advent continent was extremely harsh. Almost everyone who had reached a high realm had fought their way up. Countless corpses of the defeated had already fallen behind them. It was precisely this environment that made the cultivators on the immortal Advent continent famous for their outstanding combat strength. His simply raising GU. Kui Heng could not help but sigh. This management method was clearly not to nurture experts of a higher realm, but to nurture mid to high-level fighters. The goal was to place them on the level of invincible immortal kings. After all, if one wanted to step into the quasi-immortal emperor realm, he had to see through the mysteries of time. This was not something that could be achieved through battle experiences. However, his emotions were only temporary. Kui Heng quickly confirmed his next goal. I'll go to the 9 high sects to take a look first. When Kui Heng arrived at the immortal Advent continent, Emperor Wu had already brought Yang Qing to the 9th heaven's heaven gate. The so-called 9 heavens was actually the 9 heavens world established by the 9 immortal ancestors after they called themselves immortals. Their goal was to be high and lofty and differentiate themselves from the living beings on the ground below. The essence of the 9th heaven was extremely high, and the great Tao laws were also extremely complicated. It was the essence of the primordial world. Under normal circumstances, only the immortal ancestors could step into the 9th heaven. Other immortal emperors and quasi-immortal emperors were only allowed to enter the 9th heaven after receiving the immortal ancestors' invitation. If they barged in without an invitation, 9 heavens immortal thunder would immediately descend. There were a total of 9 bolts of immortal thunder. Just the first bolt of immortal thunder was enough to severely injure a quasi-immortal emperor. The second bolt could destroy the body and soul of a quasi-immortal emperor. The third bolt could severely injure an immortal emperor at the initial stage of the heavenless realm. The further one went, the stronger they would become. At the 9th bolt of immortal thunder, even a perfected heavenless immortal emperor would be reduced to ashes. However, as long as the 9 heavens immortal thunder was triggered, it would actually be considered as disrespecting the immortal ancestors. Therefore, before the entrance of the 9th heaven, they even set up a heaven gate checkpoint to be guarded by the immortal emperors under the immortal ancestors to prevent those who were not invited from approaching the 9th heaven. As soon as Emperor Wu and Yang Qing arrived, they heard a thunderous shout. "Stop, before the 9th heaven." 720 Summoning a meeting of all immortal emperors. 720 Summoning a meeting of all immortal emperors. This voice seemed to come from an endless height. It had the power to suppress everything, making one feel that there was nowhere to escape. When Emperor Wu heard this voice, he immediately knew that he had been discovered by the immortal emperor guarding the heaven gate. He hurriedly stopped flying and bowed respectfully to the sky with Yang Qing. I'm quasi-immortal Emperor Tai Wu of the immortal Fang continent. I have something extremely important to report to immortal emperors and Chen. This is a major matter that will affect the entire primordial world. Gate Masters, please show mercy and let me in. Although guarding the heaven gate did not seem to be a very high-level position, it was extremely important to be able to guard the door for the immortal ancestors. Only immortal emperors were qualified to hold such a post. Therefore, quasi-immortal emperors who had yet to become immortal emperors usually addressed these two immortal emperors as gate masters as a form of respect. However, the only response he received was still that sentence. Stop, before the ninth heaven. Stop, before the ninth heaven. They had no intention of making an exception. However, Emperor Wu did not give up. He continued to shout. A heaven's will that has grasped the power of heaven heart light has appeared in the universe under me. It's possible that it has already grown to the immortal emperor realm and is about to become a heaven's will that has grasped the power of heaven heart phenomenon. This time, the two immortal emperors guarding the door did not continue berating. After a while, a voice suddenly came from above. Come up and talk. Emperor Wu's eyes lit up when he heard this, and his face revealed an ecstatic expression. He hurriedly flew up with Yang Qing. But at this moment, a voice came from above. One person will do. Yang Qing immediately said, Master, I'll wait here. All right. Emperor Wu nodded. Then, he headed to the heaven gate and finally saw the two immortal emperors guarding the heaven gate. This was the first time he had come to the heaven gate of the ninth heaven, and it was also the first time he had seen these two immortal emperors. Then, he realized that these two immortal emperors did not seem to be ordinary immortal emperors. There was actually no aura of the power of time on their bodies, as if they did not need to withstand the scouring of time at all. Their states were very strange. Under normal circumstances, a quasi-immortal emperor could sense the power of time intertwined on an immortal emperor's body. Even if an immortal emperor deliberately hid it, it was impossible to completely eliminate the traces left behind by the power of time. His master, immortal emperor Cheng Fang, was an immortal emperor at the grand completion stage of the heavenless realm. However, even an expert like immortal emperor Cheng Fang could not completely hide the power of time in front of him. After all, the power of time intertwined on the bodies of quasi-immortal emperors was not only their own source of power, but also the curse of the river of time. It was almost impossible to hide them completely, unless these two immortal emperors have already reached the perfected heavenless realm. After all, I've never seen such an expert before. Perhaps they really have the means to completely eliminate the power of time on them. Emperor Wu was bewildered and could not understand the existence of these two immortal emperors. But isn't it too exaggerated to let perfected heavenless realm immortal emperors guard the heaven gate? Or is this the foundation of the immortal ancestors? Is what you just said true? The two immortal emperors spoke indifferently. Their voices and tone were exactly the same. At the same time, they were also quietly looking at Emperor Wu. Their coldness seemed to contain a power that could see through everything, making the Emperor Wu feel that he no longer had any secrets. Under such gazes, Emperor Wu felt a huge psychological pressure. After barely calming down, he said, "It's definitely true. It's absolutely true. I saw it with my own eyes. Please let me through. I have to report this matter." All right, this is indeed a very serious matter. Under normal circumstances, I can indeed let you go over to report. One of the immortal emperors guarding the door nodded, but he quickly changed the topic. But not this time. But, why is that? Emperor Wu asked in confusion. I can tell you the reason, the immortal emperor guarding the gate said in a low voice. However, you have to hand over your true spirit mark first and swear that if you even have the thought of revealing the reason for this, your body and soul will immediately be destroyed. Emperor Wu fell silent when he heard this. Looking at the serious expression of the immortal emperors guarding the gate, he realized the importance of this meeting. It was probably not as simple as an ordinary meeting. After a long while, he nodded and said in a low voice, "Fine." As he spoke, Emperor Wu released his true spirit mark and carved an oath on it. "All right." The immortal emperor guarding the gate nodded when he saw this and said, "The reason is that this meeting was launched by the 6 existing immortal ancestors. They have gathered all the immortal emperors in the primordial world and will definitely not have any contact with the outside world for 1,000 years. What? Emperor Wu's eyes widened as he said in extreme shock, "Doesn't this mean that there are no more immortal emperors in the primordial world?" That's right. In the next 1,000 years, other than the 2 of us, there are no other immortal emperors in the primordial world, the immortal emperor guarding the gate said in a low voice. There's also no immortal ancestors. This, Emperor Wu's eyes widened. He suddenly became incomparably nervous, and his face turned pale. Doesn't this mean that if the boundless chaos sea attacks the primordial world at this time, there would be no room for resistance for the primordial world? 1,000 years was definitely enough for the boundless chaos sea to massacre the entire primordial world. Why was this happening? What kind of meeting was it? It actually had to be held by all the existing immortal ancestors and all the immortal emperors. Moreover, they had to be sealed for 1,000 years. This was simply incomprehensible. That's the situation. The immortal emperor guarding the gate nodded and said, "That's why I told you not to reveal this matter. Now is the most dangerous time for the primordial world." "Then what should we do now?" Emperor Wu asked anxiously. 721 Summoning a meeting of all immortal emperors, 2. 721 Summoning a meeting of all immortal emperors, 2. The other person said in a low voice, "Something big is probably going to happen. I just received news that the 3 immortal emperors of the sea regions around the immortal Advent continent have also gone to the 9th heaven. They even summoned those immortal emperors who aren't in charge of managing the continent." One of them looked surprised and asked curiously, "I don't remember a meeting like this before." "Actually, there was once," the other person said in a low voice. "After the first chaos calamity, the 9 immortal ancestors gathered all the immortal emperors in the primordial world and held an extremely important meeting in the 9th heaven. The situation this time is very similar. Even if they didn't gather all the immortal emperors to the 9th heaven, they probably gathered most of the immortal emperors. Something big is most likely going to happen. Could it be that the boundless chaos sea is going to do something big again?" One of them said worriedly, "I'm afraid it's not far from the truth." The other person nodded and said, "Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to invite so many immortal emperors to the meeting." Kui Heng listened to their conversation from the side, but he fell into deep thought and thought to himself, "The immortal ancestors has gathered a large number of immortal emperors for a meeting in the 9th heaven. Why?" At the same time, his eyes lit up with a bright silver light, taking in the experiences of these 2 quasi-immortal emperors over the past long years. The experiences of quasi-immortal emperors were indeed not something that immortal kings and invincible immortal kings could compare to. These 2 quasi-immortal emperors had extremely rich past experiences and came into contact with a lot of secret information, directly bringing Kui Heng a huge improvement. Moreover, not only did the 2 of them have a very detailed understanding of the situation of the immortal Advent continent, but they also had a relatively detailed understanding of the other 8 continents. This understanding not only included the current situation, but also the situation of the past countless years. Kui Heng had only flipped through the experiences of the 2 of them in their lives, but he had already obtained an extremely huge amount of information that was previously unknown to him, allowing his figure on the time spectrum to sublimate again and actually reach the level of floating above the river of time. Originally, he was still stepping on the river of time, and his feet were still in contact with it. This meant that he was still in a state of being corroded by the river of time. But now, he no longer needed to withstand the scouring of time. This once again allowed Kui Heng to experience the feeling of the essence of life sublimating. He could clearly feel that his observation of the past had become easier, and the situation and information he saw had become more accurate. He could even directly affect something from the past. This means that I already have the ability to change the past to a certain extent. Kui Heng was amazed. He was only at the mid-stage return to Void Realm, but he already had such abilities. What would it be like if he reached the peak of the mid-stage return to Void Realm or even broke through to the late-stage return to Void Realm? At this moment, he suddenly sensed something and discovered a relatively huge tremor in the river of time. At the same time, a force descended into the boundless chaos sea, as if it was searching for a universe. At this level of strength, an immortal emperor. Kui Heng immediately frowned. After sensing the essence of this power, his first reaction was that it was an immortal emperor, but he quickly realized that something was wrong and said in surprise, "No, it's not an immortal emperor. What is this?" A palm that fell into the past. 722 A palm that fell into the past. Kui Heng had seen immortal emperors before, and it was more than one. On the spectrum of the River of Time, he had seen Immortal Emperor and Chen in Fengsheng's past experiences. After coming to the primordial world, he'd investigated the past experiences of the many experts in the sea around the immortal Advent continent, as well as the immortal kings and quasi-immortal emperors of the Qianju sect. He also saw several more immortal emperors. The power aura he sensed just now was extremely similar to an immortal emperor expert, but it was far stronger than any immortal emperor he had seen. This was very extraordinary. Previously, Kui Heng had seen many immortal emperors through investigating the past. Although most of them were immortal emperors like Immortal Emperor and Chen and Immortal Emperor Dongming, who were in charge of managing the various matters of the continent, and only had cultivation levels of the initial heavenless realm, there was no lack of immortal emperors who had reached the minor or even grand completion realm. Now, this powerful aura that had descended into the boundless chaos sea was clearly stronger than a grand completion immortal emperor. Moreover, there was a very strange point. This immortal emperor actually did not have any power of time intertwined on his body, but he clearly had the ability to mobilize the power of time. He was very different from ordinary immortal emperors. The aura of an immortal emperor that doesn't intertwine with the power of time, but has a method to mobilize the power of time. This seems to be a little similar to a return to Void Realm cultivator. Kui Heng frowned slightly. This was the first time he had encountered an existence that was so close to the characteristics of an immortal cultivator since he transmigrated. This surprised him. After all, before this, be it the primordial world or the boundless chaos sea, although their cultivation paths were a little different, they all reached the same destination in the end. They were also extremely different from the path of cultivators. However, he could not be rashly sure of the exact situation yet. It was also possible that this was just an immortal emperor with a relatively special form. He has begun to search in the river of time. Is he looking for the universe I've hidden? Kui Heng's eyes lit up with a bright silver light. His perspective was transcendent from the river of time, and he immediately saw the actions of the immortal emperor. Then, he traced the past of this immortal emperor and quickly discovered the figure of Emperor Wu. The trajectory of time flowed across Emperor Wu's body. Kui Heng quickly understood the ins and outs of the matter and could not help but say in his heart, so it's one of the two immortal emperors guarding the ninth heaven. This ninth heaven meeting is actually sealed to this extent. Just now, the two quasi-immortal emperors of the Qianju sect were also discussing this ninth heaven meeting. From the degree of isolation of this ninth heaven meeting, he could feel that the contents of this meeting were definitely not simple. Something earth-shattering was definitely brewing. At this moment, Kui Heng's heart suddenly skipped a beat. His fake selves, which were scattered throughout the various universes, had also obtained a secret piece of news recently. Chaos Heaven suddenly held an expanded Chaos Heaven Assembly meeting. The scale was far larger than ordinary meetings. Other than the cabinet member, Dharma Supremes, and Assembly Masters who were usually present, they would also invite all the peak Taisu realm experts in the boundless Chaos Sea to participate. The meeting would also not be hosted by the Assembly Master as in the past, but by experts at the Heaven-Earth Saint realm. The length of the meeting was also 1,000 years, and it was also completely sealed, cutting off all connections with the outside world. This is really strange. Kui Heng frowned. He was very puzzled by this situation and asked in his heart, What's with the Chaos Heaven and Ninth Heaven holding such a meeting at the same time? The boundless Chaos Sea has a blood feud with the primordial world, and there's also a clear battle for the Great Tao. This time, they actually held a similar meeting together so tacitly. Even the length of the meeting is the same. Isn't this too strange? There must be a reason for this abnormality. However, although he was puzzled, he did not rashly investigate the immortal Emperor gatekeeper. This immortal emperor guarding the gate was in a strange state. Before he figured it out, he would not act rashly. In Kui Heng's opinion, the most important thing to him now was to increase his cultivation realm and strength as much as possible. Only by being strong enough could he ensure his safety. Moreover, from the various signs, the battle between the boundless Chaos Sea and the primordial world could start at any time. At that time, there would most likely be immortal ancestor-level experts fighting. With his cultivation realm that had yet to reach the perfected mid-stage return to Void Realm, it was probably difficult for him to escape from a battle at the immortal ancestor realm. After all, these immortal ancestors' powers were not purely obtained from cultivation. They had either directly obtained 1/12 of the power of their supreme god of man, or had grasped the power left behind by the supreme god of heaven or supreme god of earth divine. This method of obtaining power was very likely to increase their cultivation by leaps and bounds. From the fact that he could easily surpass initial and minor completion stage Heavenless Realm immortal emperors with his cultivation at the mid-stage return to Void Realm that had not even reached the peak, the grand completion and perfection stages of the Heavenless Realm were most likely within the range of the mid-stage return to Void Realm. Of course, a perfected Heavenless Realm cultivator might be comparable to a late-stage return to Void Realm cultivator, but they would most likely not be able to reach the peak of the return to Void Realm, let alone surpass it. However, the immortal ancestors might far surpass the perfected Heavenless Realm immortal emperors. It was very likely that they had reached the Tao integration realm. However, it's really difficult for me to imagine what kind of realm the Tao integration is. How can I understand the power of this realm? Kui Heng frowned and fell into deep thought. The peak return to Void Realm is to reach an omnipotent state. It's already like this. What other aspects can I break through in? This made him feel very puzzled, but there was only one way to figure out these doubts, and that was to increase his cultivation realm as much as possible. 723 A palm that fell into the past, 2. 723 A palm that fell into the past, 2. I should continue exploring the primordial world first. Kui Heng thought to himself, it just so happens that the immortal emperors and immortal ancestors are all in the ninth heaven. It's safer to explore. With his current cultivation realm and the methods he had, as long as the immortal emperors and immortal ancestors were not around, no one would discover his existence even if he searched every corner of the primordial world. In this way, it perfectly matched Kui Heng's plan. In other words, he could silently explore and secretly increase his cultivation realm. It would be best if no one discovered him even if he cultivated to the peak of the return to Void Realm. This situation was undoubtedly the safest and most stable for him. With the immortal emperor of the Tianju sect gone, this place has no value to me for exploration. Next. Kui Heng quickly made a decision and left for the next sect, the Myriad Flowers Palace. Of course, he did not relax his surveillance of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor. This person's state was too strange. It was difficult to guarantee that he would not have any strange methods to find the universe he had hidden. Outside the primordial universe, in the Chaos Sea. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor walked as if he was taking a leisurely stroll, as if he was not worried about being discovered at all. In fact, that was indeed the case. When he walked in the Chaos Sea, he did not receive any rejection from any power. He was like a living being born in the Chaos Sea and could get along harmoniously with any laws here. Even Emperor Wu, who was beside him, seemed to be affected by some special power. He could perfectly fuse into the laws of the Chaos Sea and become like a living being born here, able to move freely. This state surprised Emperor Wu very much. He could not help but ask, Gate Master, you actually have such a method to actually transform the source of your life essence? The living beings born in the primordial world were very different from the living beings born in the Chaos Sea. Even if the two looked similar on the surface, there was a huge difference in their essence of life. Therefore, the living beings of the primordial world would actually be suppressed to a certain extent if they wanted to move freely in the universe of the Chaos Sea. The stronger the living being, the more obvious the suppression. This was also one of the important reasons why it was difficult for the primordial world to launch an effective attack on the Chaos Sea for so many years. However, now, Emperor Wu realized that as long as he followed this Gate Master Immortal Emperor, he would actually not be suppressed by the rules of the Chaos Sea at all. The source of his life essence seemed to have transformed into the Chaos Sea. This was too magical and unbelievable. He had never heard of such a method. It's just transforming the source of the essence of life. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor shook his head gently and smiled. It might be very difficult for you, but it's nothing to us. When he spoke, he was filled with extreme confidence, as if changing the essence of life was an insignificant matter to him. Gate Master is mighty, Emperor Wu said respectfully. Don't flatter me like that. I'm not a mighty figure. Gate Master Immortal Emperor chuckled. I haven't even found that universe yet. Gate Master must be joking. With your ability, you will definitely be able to find it. This is something that will happen sooner or later, Emperor Wu said very respectfully. It's not that easy. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor shook his head and said, after all, that universe has been hidden by someone with extremely great skill. There might even be Heaven-Earth Saint Realm experts involved. It's not easy to find it. From the looks of the current situation, that universe is most likely hidden in the River of Time, in an unknown space-time. It's still very difficult to find an inconspicuous universe in this vast space-time. As he spoke, he suddenly fell into deep thought, as if he had thought of something and had some inspiration. He turned to Emperor Wu and said, do you know the state of the living beings in that universe? Gate Master, what do you mean by the living beings' state? Emperor Wu asked curiously. How many living beings are there in that universe? How many people are in each realm? What realm is the strongest group of people, and how many are there? The Gate Master Immortal Emperor said in a low voice. You said that there was once a fragment soul of an immortal king in that universe acting as the heaven's will. There should be this data. Yes. Emperor Wu nodded repeatedly and said, it should be in the Myriad Heavens Palace under my command. The immortal king's fragment soul will regularly report the situation of the universe in to the Myriad Heavens Palace. What period of data do you want? Any period is fine. The corners of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor's mouth curled up slightly as he smiled and said, as long as there's an episode of data, I can fish this universe out of the River of Time from the past. Gate Master is mighty. Emperor Wu also smiled when he heard this and hurriedly said, please wait here for a moment. I'll bring you the data of that universe now. With that, he hurriedly bade farewell and left. He returned to the Myriad Heavens Palace in the primordial world and pulled out all the data about that universe. After preparing this data, Emperor Wu hurriedly left the Myriad Heavens Palace and returned to the Chaos Sea, handing the data to the Gate Master. Gate Master, see if these can be used. Emperor Wu held the jade slip with both hands that recorded the comprehensive data of the various periods of the universe and handed it to the Gate Master. All right. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor picked up the jade slip and read it briefly before nodding. He smiled and said, it's very good and very detailed. With this data, it's enough to help me trace back to the spacetime before that universe was hidden. As he spoke, he began to investigate the River of Time according to the data provided in the jade slip. One universe after another flew past his eyes. Among them were the lights and shadows of countless civilizations and living beings born and dying. All the universes that had existed in the past could not be hidden from his perception. Regarding this, the Gate Master Immortal Emperor seemed to be used to it long ago. He did not reveal any strange expressions at all and quietly observed the situation of these universes and screened them. Before long, he relied on the data recorded in the jade slip to find a universe in the upper reaches of the River of Time. It was the light and shadow of this universe from 3 million years ago. This universe had originally been completely hidden, and its past and future had already disappeared without a trace. However, under the special method of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor, he actually found such a trace of clue. The Eon Light evasion spell had been broken through. Then, the Gate Master Immortal Emperor began to explore along the past images of this universe. In the blink of an eye, he locked onto the location of this universe. I found it. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor chuckled and said, "What a wonderful time technique. Normally speaking, no one below the Immortal Ancestor realm can find it. Unfortunately, as long as there are living beings, they can't hide from me. Tai Wu, follow me." The moment the Gate Master Immortal Emperor broke through the concealment of the Eon Light evasion spell and found the universe, Kui Heng immediately sensed it. Eon Light evasion was broken through? Kui Heng revealed a stunned expression. His eyes lit up with silver light before he said in realization, "So that's how it is." He used the information of the living beings as a clue to investigate the traces of the universe's past. His perception of living beings is actually so powerful. Actually, Kui Heng had already made plans for this unexpected situation. Moreover, while figuring out the methods of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor, he also figured out what level the strength of this Gate Master was equivalent to. He had just entered the mid-stage return to Void Realm and was slightly weaker than Kui Heng's current strength. However, the essence of his life seemed to be extremely high, and it was difficult for Kui Heng to investigate clearly. However, in terms of cultivation realm, as long as one's cultivation realm was higher by a single point, then it was higher than the sky. Therefore, the moment Kui Heng discovered that the concealment of his Eon Light evasion had been seen through, he took action. He raised his right hand and clenched his 5 fingers. His palm became faint and dark, and an extremely pure pitch-black light appeared, as if it symbolizes the source of all death. Yin-Yang Seal. At the same time, a vast and flowing silver river suddenly appeared in front of Kui Heng. His palm was raised now, but when it landed, it had already reached the upper reaches of the River of Time. In the space-time of the past, just as Emperor Wu took out the jade slip, a sparkling white palm appeared above him out of thin air. The pitch-black light gleaming under this palm was like a mirror, reflecting countless scenes of death. Kui Heng had attacked from the present to kill Emperor Wu, who was in the past. 724 A gift left behind by the Supreme God of Man. 724 A gift left behind by the Supreme God of Man. Hence, an incomparably powerful power of destruction landed on the Gate Master Immortal Emperor. An extremely pitch-black light almost instantly drowned him. Under normal circumstances, the life force of the Gate Master would quickly dissipate. In the end, he would be completely destroyed by the yin-faced black light of the yin-yang seal and lose his vitality, walking towards the final destruction. However, the life force on the Gate Master seemed to be endless. No matter how the black light shone, washed, and drowned him, it could not exhaust the life force on his body. His life force was like an endless sea, without any borders or end. Even if the black light shone for another 1,000 or 10,000 years, it might not be able to exhaust such a huge amount of vitality. The black light was like a bonfire. It was almost impossible to evaporate this boundless sea. Such a huge amount of vitality was too abnormal. How did this happen? Kui Heng was extremely surprised. With his current cultivation realm, the yin-yang seal he used was very powerful. Under the envelopment of the yin-yang seal's black light, even a grand completion heavenless realm immortal emperor would quickly die. It would not take more than 3 breaths. Now, the Gate Master had already lasted for a full 15 minutes, but the life force in his body was still incomparably exuberant, as if he was not attacked by the black light at all. What exactly is he? Could it be that the concept of life has gained sentience and become a living spirit? Kui Heng was bewildered. He retracted the power of the yin-yang seal and used his spiritual golden eyes to stare at the Gate Master Immortal Emperor, trying to see through his essence. Under the gaze of the spiritual golden eyes, the Gate Master Immortal Emperor was an incomparably huge ball of vitality. It was vast and endless like an abyss sea, and it even carried the source essence of life. "725 A gift left behind by the Supreme God of Man, 2. 725 A gift left behind by the Supreme God of Man, 2. Compared to a specific life form, This was more like the materialization of a concept. However, it could be said to be a conceptual existence with clear characteristics of a living being. This situation was too strange, and Kui Heng had never encountered it before. In the end, he could only shake his head and sigh in his heart. With such a huge amount of vitality, be it the yin-yang seal or the time saber, I'm afraid they can't kill him. In that case, I can only imprison him first. Since he could not kill the past Emperor Wu, the final feedback to the current situation was already destined. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor would inevitably find that universe again. However, to stop this situation from happening, he did not have to kill the past Emperor Wu. It was enough to imprison the Gate Master Immortal Emperor. Moreover, after imprisoning this Immortal Emperor, he could also investigate his past experiences. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor had existed for an extremely long time. He had lived for countless years, and Kui Heng should be able to obtain a large amount of unknown information from him. Perhaps he could take this opportunity to advance his cultivation to the perfected mid-stage return to Void Realm. Thinking of this, Kui Heng raised his right hand and stretched out his index finger to swipe lightly in the void. Immediately, a golden rope that seemed to be able to seal all matter and space appeared. Immortal Technique. Immortal Binding Rope. Past Timeline. When the Gate Master Immortal Emperor saw that the palm that contained terrifying power had already retreated, he could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Although he seemed to have easily blocked the yin-black light of the yin-yang seal just now, he was actually enduring an incomparably huge pressure. What a powerful spell! The Gate Master Immortal Emperor could not help but sigh in his heart. With the effect of that black light just now, even a perfected Heavenless Realm Immortal Emperor probably won't be able to last long. At this moment, Emperor Wu, who he had put away in his sleeve, suddenly said, "Senior, what happened just now? Did an enemy discover us and want to attack us?" He had clearly died once, but he didn't know anything now. He didn't even know that he had died once. The difference between a quasi-immortal emperor and an immortal emperor seemed to be only a thin line, but the difference was actually so great that it was like the difference between heaven and earth. It was impossible to compare them at all. An expert had attacked from the future. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor explained briefly before saying in a low voice, "Give me the data of the various periods of that universe." "Yes." Emperor Wu hurriedly agreed. Soon, he took out the jade slip and said respectfully, "Gate Master, it's here. Please take a look." Then, the Gate Master Immortal Emperor found that universe again. Moreover, this time, there was no obstruction. There was no attack from the future. Everything was incomparably normal. It was as if the person who had just attacked had given up and no longer planned to care about that universe. However, even if he was not obstructed at all, the Gate Master Immortal Emperor was still very careful, ready to defend or counterattack at any time. The powerful power of the yin-yang seal had already been deeply imprinted in his mind, making him feel very afraid. However, until he completely located that universe, no power appeared. Could it be that he really gave up? The Gate Master Immortal Emperor had some doubts. However, at this moment, a golden light suddenly lit up in front of him, and then a golden rope appeared. The surface of this rope was suffused with a faint golden light. The surging chaotic chi around it suddenly became completely still, and even time seemed to have stopped flowing. It seemed to be able to imprison everything. Not good. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor felt a sense of danger. This was the first time he had seen such a powerful imprisonment force in his life. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor only took a glance at the golden rope and immediately sensed that something was unusual. He hurriedly circulated all his strength in an attempt to avoid the shackles of the golden rope. But this avoidance was meaningless. When the immortal binding rope appeared in front of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor, it had already cut off his connection with the past and future, leaving only the present Gate Master Immortal Emperor. Therefore, it was already impossible to escape on the time spectrum. His other directions of movement had also been completely sealed, and they were all enveloped in a layer of strange golden light. Although the immortal binding rope was only floating in front of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor and had not really bound him, everything around him had been sealed. "You want to imprison me like this?" The Gate Master Immortal Emperor suddenly shouted in a low voice. A power that far exceeded the essence of an immortal emperor erupted from his body, as if it symbolizes the source of all life. It actually shook the immortal binding rope's seal on space and time, and he immediately escaped into the river of time. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor naturally did not have the ability to reverse time and directly let his main body escape. However, he controlled a power that was suspected to be the source of life. With the cover of the river of time, he actually scattered himself into billions of pieces and landed in different universes, trying to use this method to escape. Under such circumstances, Emperor Wu was naturally heartlessly abandoned. Moreover, he was directly sent to the immortal binding rope. This made him extremely terrified and his face turned pale. However, these actions of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor could only be considered a final struggle. It was impossible for him to truly escape the shackles of the immortal binding rope. The golden immortal binding rope was still floating in the Chaos Sea. At the same time that he bound Emperor Wu, he separated billions of golden threads. Every thread corresponded to a portion of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor. In the blink of an eye, the immortal binding rope gathered the scattered Gate Master Immortal Emperor and pulled them back into the Chaos Sea, binding them tightly. 726a Gift left behind by the Supreme God of Man, 2. 726a Gift left behind by the Supreme God of Man, 2. Under the imprisonment of the immortal binding rope, all the power and magical aspects of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor were suppressed, equivalent to non-existent. Only his incomparably huge life force was still preserved. Which expert attacked? Can you show yourself? The Gate Master Immortal Emperor asked loudly. He now knew very well that it was impossible for him to escape, but he still wanted to know who it was that had such powerful divine powers. In the past, he never thought that anyone below the immortal ancestor realm could suppress him. Now, he was captured and imprisoned so easily. However, his question was not answered. The Chaos Sea was silent, as if there was no third person other than him and Emperor Wu beside him. In fact, Kui Heng was looking down from a higher perspective that they could not discover. He observed the two of them and investigated their past. Emperor Wu's past experiences were ordinary. He was a quasi-immortal emperor. The only thing worthy of praise was that he had a master who had reached the grand completion stage of the heavenless realm. Other than that, he was not valuable to Kui Heng. However, Kui Heng was very careful when investigating the past of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor. He used the Eon Light Evasion technique with all his might and tried his best to hide himself to avoid being discovered by the immortal ancestors in his memories. At the same time, he also used the spiritual golden eyes to investigate the essence of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor. After making all the preparations, Kui Heng began to investigate the past of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor. However, the results of his investigation surprised him. The past experiences of the Immortal Emperor guarding the door were incomparably monotonous. In the past countless years, he had almost spent all his time in front of the heaven gate of the ninth heaven. He had never cultivated, nor did he have any experience walking the world. His life could be said to be a piece of white paper. Such past experiences could only allow Kui Heng to understand the nature of his power, life form, and other information. It could be considered new knowledge. However, the essence of his life and why he had such a huge amount of life force could only be known when he investigated the time when he was born. The lifespan of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor was too long. Kui Heng could not even remember how many billions of years had passed. Suddenly, a ball of endless dazzling light appeared in front of his eyes. This ball of light seemed to contain the mysteries of all life, and it was also the source of the foundation of all life. It also had endless life force. Around this ball of light were 9 blurry figures. They were whispering to each other, as if they were communicating about something. It's too wasteful for the Supreme God of Man to distribute a third of his remaining power to all the living beings. That's right. Those ignorant living beings are not worthy of receiving the divine gifts of the Supreme God of Man. The first 2 portions of power were scattered before we could stop it. We can't waste this one anymore. We're the successors of the Supreme God of Man and have the right to make decisions. We've already fused with the divine gift of the supreme God of man and can't continue to fuse with more. Why don't we use this power as the foundation to nurture a Tao soldier that listens to our orders? Yes, that's a good suggestion. The strength of the Tao soldier nurtured with this power will be above all mortals after all, second only to us. Its life force will also be incomparably huge and almost impossible to kill. It's indeed not bad. Who is it? How dare they cross time to spy on us? (727) Karma Reversal, Spacetime Chaos. 727 Karma Reversal, Spacetime Chaos. The blurry figure's shout contained a terrifying power that pierced through the river of time. The originally calm river of time suddenly boiled. Kui Heng, who was investigating the past through the Gate Master Immortal Emperor, suddenly felt a sense of danger. At this moment, he felt a huge distortion in the spacetime trajectory around him. The power of time became incomparably chaotic, and he actually wanted to pull himself, who was already standing on the river of time, back into the sea of bitterness. Clearly, as the figure shouted angrily, it also attacked Kui Heng, who was hidden in the river of time. His palm seemed to contain the power to see through all the mysteries of time. With this distant spacetime as the core, it actually illuminated everything around him. At this moment, Kui Heng's hiding technique in the river of time was actually instantly seen through and presented to the 9 strange figures in the form of a blurry human-shaped shadow. At the same time, his perception of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor was instantly imprisoned. An incomparably terrifying power began to extend into the future. That figure actually wanted to trace him to the present time and kill this spy who existed in the future. What a powerful ability! Although it can't directly affect the future, it can already use my perception from the future to this present as the starting point to affect the future me. Just this alone is enough to prove that this person's cultivation has far surpassed the mid-stage return to Void Realm. Is this an immortal ancestor? Kui Heng was surprised and immediately determined the strength of the person who had just attacked. Moreover, from the looks of it, they should have just fused with the divine gift of the supreme God of man. Their strength had most likely not reached the peak of their later life, but they were already so powerful. The future immortal ancestors have probably already reached the late-stage return to Void Realm. I can't fight them. Retreat. Kui Heng quickly made a judgment in his heart. He did not hesitate and immediately entered the Grotto Heaven. Then, all his traces on the timeline were restrained and disappeared from the river of time. This caused the immortal ancestor to lose the point of origin and path to trace the future. In his perception, the future immediately became blurry, and it was impossible to continue tracing. He actually escaped. He actually has such methods. The immortal ancestor suppressed his anger and snorted. If not for the fact that I haven't completely grasped the power of the divine gift, how could I let him escape? There's no need to be angry. I've already recorded a trace of that living being's life aura. At this moment, another immortal ancestor smiled and said, as long as he's a living being, that had evolved from the supreme God of man's divine nature. Even if he can avoid the trace of time, he can't avoid the pursuit of the life aura of a living being. As he spoke, he flicked his finger, and an extremely subtle aura of power appeared. It contained some of Kui Heng's dharmic powers. This was actually not an aura of life. However, the dharmic powers of an immortal cultivator were very close to the aura of life. This immortal ancestor had never seen the dharmic powers of an immortal cultivator before, so he directly treated it as the aura of life. Haha, that's true. Another immortal ancestor nodded and said with a smile, the divine nature of the supreme God of man is the origin of all living beings. Now that we've fused with the divine gifts of the supreme God of man, we naturally have the authority to control living beings. The aura of life is proof that he's a life form. As long as we track down the aura of that person just now, even if he's in the distant future, he won't be able to escape. Yes, that's true. The immortal ancestor who had attacked Kui Heng earlier nodded and said, I'll trace his life force now and kill his future self. As he spoke, a strong pure white light appeared in his palm. It contained endless life force and enveloped Kuiheng's aura of life force. Then, this immortal ancestor used the authority unique to the supreme god of man and began to trace the living beings with this aura of life force. The divine nature of the supreme god of man was the beginning and source of all life. Even the living beings in the boundless chaos sea originated from the concept of life represented by the divine nature of the supreme god of man. Therefore, under the special authority of the supreme god of man, all living beings in the past, present, and future were within the scope of investigation. Under normal circumstances, as long as a trace of a living being's life force was controlled by an immortal ancestor, this life form would have nowhere to hide. No matter what method they used to hide, it was useless. Their whereabouts would definitely be tracked. Your method of escaping is indeed magical. You actually made me lose my target. Unfortunately, you can't escape in the end. The immortal ancestor sneered. Under the special power of the divine authority of the supreme god of man, the river of time of the past, present, and future flowed before his eyes. The light and shadows of countless lives kept flickering. As long as a living being that matched the aura of life appeared, they would immediately be targeted by this immortal ancestor. However, this immortal ancestor used the divine river of time to search through all the living beings in the past, present, and future, but he actually did not find a living being that matched this trace of life aura. It was as if this living being had never existed. How can this be? The cold smile on the immortal ancestor's face had already disappeared, replaced by shock and confusion. He could not understand this situation. Even if he's already dead in the distant future, as long as he exists, he can definitely be found. The other immortal ancestors also saw that something was wrong with this immortal ancestor's expression and hurriedly came over to ask, "How is it? Did you find him? How many years ago did this person come from? What's his background? Did you kill him?" (728) Karma Reversal, Spacetime Chaos, 2. 728 Karma Reversal, Spacetime Chaos, 2. Faced with the immortal ancestor's question, the expression of the immortal ancestor who had just attacked turned extremely ugly. He said in a low voice, "I didn't find any living being in the past, present, or future that matched this trace of life aura." As soon as he said this, the other 8 immortal ancestors looked at each other with disbelief. How is that possible? As long as he's a living being, it's impossible for him to escape the detection of the divine authority bestowed by the supreme god of man. Let me try. I'll try too. How can he not be found? Then, the 8 immortal ancestors activated their unique authority in the divine gifts left behind by the supreme god of man and began to investigate all the living beings that ever existed. Under the investigation of such authority, as long as this person had existed and was a living being, it should be able to be found. However, a moment later, the 8 immortal ancestors all revealed shocked expressions. They almost could not believe the results of their investigation. It's actually really not there. How could this be? Could it be that he already has methods or treasures that can hide his life source in the future? Impossible. If he hid his life source, how could I have imprinted his life aura? Then why can't he be found? Our authority's detection range comes from the divine power of the supreme god of man. What if he didn't originate from the lineage of the supreme god of man? What nonsense are you talking about? All humans are created from the concept of the beginning and end and born as living beings. After that, all living beings originate from the same source. How can there be living beings that don't belong to the supreme god of man? Then why can't we find any traces of his life? This unexpected outcome actually caused them to argue with each other. Enough. In the end, it was the immortal ancestor who attacked, who shouted loudly and said in a low voice, "Since this person has spied on us from the distant future, it means that we'll most likely have a conflict with him in the future. Although his strength has yet to reach our level, he's not weak. Moreover, his background is extremely mysterious, and his abilities are very special. He's probably our future enemy. Moreover, since there's an existence like him, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be another similar existence. We have to make preparations early. I suggest we start with that aura of life force." But we can't find that person through this trace of life aura at all, an immortal ancestor said in confusion. How do we start? Didn't everyone already raise an idea just now? The immortal ancestor pointed at the ball of power left behind by the supreme god of man and chuckled. How about using this aura of life force as a template to nurture a Tao soldier? You can do that. An immortal ancestor looked stunned, then fell into deep thought. A moment later, he nodded lightly and said, "It seems feasible." "Yes, I think it's feasible too." Another immortal ancestor nodded and said, "The power left behind by the supreme god of man can nurture all living beings. With this trace of aura as the foundation, we can nurture living beings similar to that person. In the future, we'll use the characteristics of this living being as the foundation to deduce his cultivation path. When he really grows up, he might be able to have the same characteristics as that person. At that time, we can reference this living being to increase our understanding of that person." "Good idea," another immortal ancestor praised. "Although this wisp of life aura can't perfectly replicate that person, it can still nurture living beings with similar characteristics. Let's do that." The other immortal ancestors nodded in agreement with this decision. Hence, two lives that were somewhat similar to Kui Heng's dharmic powers were born. As the immortal ancestors had only given them some of the power left behind by the supreme god of man, their cultivation could only slightly surpass the perfected immortal emperor realm at most, far inferior to the 9 immortal ancestors. In the long years that followed, the 9 immortal ancestors analyzed the essence of their life more than once, trying to deduce the cultivation path contained in this essence of life. In the end, they combined their cultivation method and the power trajectory they had deduced to summarize a new complete cultivation method. In other words, the 9 heavens realm cultivation path that was passed down to the future generations. However, the effect was not satisfactory. In the cultivation process of the 9 heavens realm, these 2 living beings who had some divine gift power were special. They could control the power of time and escape the corrosion of the power of time. The other living beings still had to constantly entangle with the power of time like the 9 immortal ancestors in the past to grasp greater power and break through to a higher realm. Therefore, in essence, these 2 living beings were not much different from ordinary living beings, nor did they really have the characteristics of that mysterious person. Hence, as time passed, the immortal ancestors gave up on studying these 2 living beings, but they did not let them leave and gave them a responsibility. Guard the heaven gate for eternity. Those 2 living beings were actually the 2 gate masters. In the Grotto Heaven Tao Palace, Kui Heng was feeling the changes in his state and thought to himself, "What a powerful immortal ancestor. When I hid in the Grotto Heaven to avoid the traces of time, he actually absorbed a wisp of dharmic powers from my body. Fortunately, that trace of dharmic powers is only a trace of dharmic powers left behind when I used the Eon Light evasion. It can only be considered a product of my original dharmic powers being modified. It's completely different from my original dharmic powers. Moreover, it's been thousands of years. At most, it can only retain the characteristics of an immortal cultivator's dharmic powers. Wait, isn't the Gate Master Immortal Emperor similar to an immortal cultivator in terms of dharmic powers? Previously, when he sensed the aura of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor, he felt that that person had the power of an immortal emperor, but he was not interwoven with the power of time. However, he also had the means to mobilize the power of time. It was a little similar to the characteristics of a return to void cultivator. When I glimpsed that time period, those immortal ancestors were discussing using the power left behind by the supreme god of man to nurture a Tao soldier. That Gate Master Immortal Emperor should have originated from this. A trace of my dharmic powers was absorbed by an immortal ancestor. Could it be that when I pried into the past of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor, they referenced my dharmic powers aura? However, when I met the Gate Master Immortal Emperor, I hadn't gone back in time yet. It shouldn't have changed because of this past. Moreover, the reason why I can go back to that time was because I captured the Gate Master Immortal Emperor. If the Gate Master Immortal Emperor only had such power because I went back to that time, wouldn't it be contradictory? What is this? A time paradox? Karma reversal? For a moment, Kui Heng actually felt that time and space were in chaos, and the present was confused with the past. It took him a while to calm down slightly. The mysteries of time far exceed my imagination. The realm of omnipotence is most likely not as simple as it sounds. Understanding cause and effect and understanding spacetime should also be included. What kind of realm is that? If one can reach such a level at the peak of the return to void realm, what kind of scene should the Tao integration, tribulation transcendence, and Mahayana realm above the return to void realm be like? Also, where did this cultivation path come from? Now that I've looked at the level of the immortal ancestors, there are still no other traces of the existence of immortal cultivators. It's impossible to create something out of nothing. To me, there are still too many unknown secrets. I have to explore further and increase my cultivation realm and comprehension on the spectrum of time. Although I didn't see much secret information when I investigated the past of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor just now, just seeing the power left behind by the 9 immortal ancestors and the supreme god of man greatly increased my cultivation. I've only explored a small portion of the primordial world, and there are still many things I haven't explored. If I can explore all of the primordial world, it should be enough for me to reach the peak of the mid-stage return to void realm or even break through to the late-stage return to void realm. Kui Heng calmed himself down and decided on his next move. Then, he left the grotto heaven and returned to the Chaos Sea. His gaze landed on the Gate Master Immortal Emperor who was imprisoned by the immortal binding rope. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor also noticed Kui Heng's gaze and sneered. "You're actually not dead. With me as a guide, you should have seen the immortal ancestors and been killed. However, there's no hurry. 1,000 years later, when the immortal ancestors end the meeting, it will be the time of your death." 729 Occupying time, unifying the past and the present. 729 Occupying time, unifying the past and the present. Heh, 1,000 years later? Kui Heng chuckled when he heard that. Then I'll wait for them to end the meeting. To him, time no longer meant much. 1,000 years could turn into tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years at any time. With his previous cultivation speed, such a long time was probably enough for him to cultivate to the peak return to void realm. Of course, the premise was that he could maintain his current improvement speed. This was not an easy task. Even if he investigated all the current information about the primordial world, the best outcome should only be breaking through to the late-stage return to void realm. And this was the result of a large number of fake selves exploring the boundless chaos sea together. When he reached the late-stage return to void realm, he would probably have to carefully explore the mysteries of the primordial world and the past of the boundless chaos sea. He might even have to change his form on the spectrum of time. Now that I've completed about 70% of my cultivation in the mid-stage return to void realm, my influence on the past has increased further. I can even directly descend to a certain point in the past. From this inference, when I reach the peak of the mid-stage return to void realm, I might be able to achieve a special time state that exists in the past and present. If that's really the case, then I won't be weak anymore. Even if I return to the time when I just came out of the beginner's space, I can transform into my current mid-stage return to void realm self at any time. Is this considered spreading my existence from this timeline to the past? The final goal is to combine the omnipresent characteristics of my fake selves to cover all the space-time in the timeline. Kui Heng made a reasonable estimation of the limits of the mid-stage return to void realm. However, a problem followed. According to this path, the timeline I can rewind and occupy should start from now until I come out of the beginner's space. Then can I continue to rewind and occupy the timeline where I didn't exist? Letting me appear in a timeline that originally didn't exist for me is equivalent to me deciding if I exist in the past. Karma is reversed, and spacetime turns chaotic. Is this a characteristic of a late-stage return to void cultivator? In the end, he shook his head and stopped thinking about this. He thought to himself, it's useless to think too much. I should take the path in front of me first and reach the peak of the mid-stage return to void realm before thinking about anything else. Thinking of this, Kui Heng restrained his thoughts and looked at the Gate Master Immortal Emperor with a cold smile. He said indifferently, "How do you think I should deal with you?" "Deal with me as you wish." The Gate Master Immortal Emperor was not afraid at all. He sneered and said, "Even if you kill me and destroy my body and soul, when the immortal ancestors end the meeting, they will change this history and let you die so that I can live." Clearly, his confidence was based on the power of the immortal ancestors and their ability on space-time. As long as the immortal ancestors attacked after the meeting and killed Kui Heng, who had yet to attack him, they could make the matter of him being killed by Kui Heng into something that had never happened before. He could naturally survive normally. This was not a revival. This was preventing the death of the Gate Master Immortal Emperor from happening again. It was the same method that Kui Heng could use to change part of history. A perfected Immortal Emperor has the ability to modify the past. Kui Heng thought to himself, however, if an Immortal Emperor wants to modify the past, he will most likely be restrained by the immortal ancestors. In that case, how much of the history I know now more or less contains the will of the immortal ancestors? How much of it is real, and how much of it has been modified? I guess investigating the history that once really existed is also a part of the cultivation of the return to Void Realm. This way, I'll most likely become enemies with many immortal ancestors. It's also possible that I'll touch the secrets and interests of the Heaven-Earth Saints. The power of the immortal ancestors are above mine, and it's most likely the same for the Heaven-Earth Saints. Although the latter is not hostile to me now, if I really touch their interests, the subsequent situation is unknown. Initially, I thought that after reaching the return to Void Realm, relying on the omnipresent characteristics of my fake selves, I could explore all aspects at the same time, making cultivation easier. From the looks of it, I was taking it for granted. As expected, there has never been a simple path on the path of immortal cultivation. I have to increase my strength as much as possible. Only by becoming strong enough can I make the thorny path smoother. At this moment, the Gate Master Immortal Emperor saw that Kui Heng was silent for a long time and sneered again. "Why? Could it be that you're really afraid? If you had known earlier, why would you be so arrogant?" He was begging for death. In any case, even if he died, the immortal ancestors could change history and revive him. Therefore, he was fearless. "Do you want to die so badly?" Kui Heng turned to look at the Gate Master Immortal Emperor and chuckled. "Before the immortal ancestors' meeting ends, follow me and be a servant." "How dare you?" The Gate Master Immortal Emperor was furious when he heard this. He said sternly, "Are you really not afraid that the immortal ancestors will make you beg for death in the future? Your living being nurtured from the divine remains of the supreme god of man. Don't argue anymore," Kui Heng said indifferently. At the same time, he increased the power of the immortal binding rope, causing the Gate Master Immortal Emperor to be unable to speak. Then, he brought the Gate Master Immortal Emperor back to the primordial world and explored the immortal Advent continent again. After confirming that he had finished exploring, he left this continent and headed to another one. Every continent in the primordial world was very huge, but to Kui Heng, it would not take long to explore them all. After all, the current primordial world was actually already quite dilapidated. In the past 19 chaos calamities, there had been too many immortal ancestor-level battles. It was no longer in its original state. 7:30 Occupying time, unifying the past and the present, 2. 7:30 Occupying time, unifying the past and the present, 2. The appearance of the primordial world had long been drowned in the river of history. Kui Heng stood at the top of a tall mountain and looked down at everything below. This was the Xianfang continent, one of the 9 continents of the primordial world like the immortal Advent continent, but it had a completely different social structure. It was not dominated by sects, but by countries. The region ruled by the immortal emperor was the largest country, and it was respected by all the other countries. At the same time, Kui Heng's fake selves was also exploring the other continents. The social structures on these continents were all different. The 9 continents were like 9 different worlds. Kui Heng did not know the reason. In order to avoid encountering the immortal ancestors of the past again, he did not rashly investigate the past of these continents. He only explored the present situation. However, even so, Kui Heng had gained a lot. A large amount of unknown information allowed him to advance much further on the path of knowing everything. At this moment, the Gate Master Immortal Emperor beside Kui Heng felt that the mysterious existence in front of him had suddenly become even more terrifying. The aura on his body was even deeper and vaster, as if it was countless times stronger than when it imprisoned him. Who is this person? He actually became stronger so quickly. What kind of monster is this? The Gate Master Immortal Emperor was shocked in his heart. He could not understand the changes Kui Heng had undergone. In fact, this was Kui Heng's cultivation realm increasing. Thanks to his comprehensive exploration of his original world, he was about to reach the peak of the mid-stage Void Return realm. At the Return to Void realm, the increase in cultivation no longer had world-shaking phenomena. Instead, the phenomena were directly reflected on the time spectrum. While triggering the phenomena on the River of Time, it would also increase his essence on the time spectrum. Just as Kui Heng had expected, when he reached the peak of the mid-stage Return to Void realm, his existence on the time spectrum began to change. His existence began to extend into the past. Originally, when he broke through to the mid-stage Return to Void realm, Kui Heng had already established a connection with his past self. However, it was only a connection. At most, he could use this connection to attack the past. At this moment, it was different. The present Kui Heng was spreading to the past. The past Kui Heng would be with the present Kui Heng. His figure began to wander in the River of Time. Countless versions of him from the past were reflected in the waves. Then, he fused with all his past selves and became one, forming a unified existence. In the past, Kui Heng looked enlightened, as if all his doubts had been answered. There was Kui Heng, who had just walked out of the beginner's space, Kui Heng, who was collecting the 7 emotions of all living beings, Kui Heng, who had left Daoju Star to explore more unknowns, and Kui Heng, who had established a nomological order and stepped onto the path to the soul formation realm. They heaved a sigh of relief and chuckled. I see. This was a response to the mysterious feeling they had sensed earlier. Kui Heng, who was in the past, already understood what was going on with his previous feelings. He also understood his current situation and knew what realm his future self had reached. However, this feeling quickly became illusory and disappeared. The past Kui Heng still advanced on his original trajectory. However, from this moment onwards, Kui Heng was completely different from before. The past Kui Heng and the current Kui Heng had already become one and existed at the same time. This also meant that with Kui Heng walking out of the beginner's space as the starting point and the present Kui Heng as the end point, this timeline had already been completely covered by Kui Heng. As long as Kui Heng was on this timeline, no matter which period in time it was, he could become a peak mid-stage Return to Void cultivator at any time. His weakest moment was also his strongest moment. He was no longer weak. This was the peak of the mid-stage Return to Void realm. Of course, the increase in his realm and cultivation not only brought about an increase in his power over the essence of time, but also an increase in his strength. In terms of power, he had already surpassed the perfected Immortal Emperor realm. Even if he was still inferior to the immortal ancestors, he did not have to rely on the Grotto Heaven to escape. Of course, he could only be compared with the immortal ancestors who had just received their divine gift from the Supreme God of Man. If he encountered the current immortal ancestors, he would most likely have to rely on the Grotto Heaven to escape again. Next, when I truly break through to the late-stage Return to Void realm, I should be able to fight against the immortal ancestors. Kui Heng thought to himself, now that I've occupied the timeline that I once existed, I'll have to occupy the timeline that I didn't exist in yet. The final achievement of the late-stage Void Return realm might be to return to the true starting point of time and completely occupy the entire timeline. But the problem is, how do I occupy the timeline that doesn't exist for me yet? He had no clue about this. Moreover, there was something else that he had been brooding over. That was that the time he lived on Earth and the time he had just transmigrated to this world did not exist in the River of Time. It was as if these two periods did not exist at all. It was normal for him to not be able to go back to his time in the beginner's space. After all, the essence of the beginner's space was extremely high. But why was it that even the previous time period could not be accessed? Was there something wrong with that period of time, or was there something wrong with the Earth itself? If I can go back to the time when I didn't exist, I might be able to answer this question. However, where should I start from? Kui Heng thought to himself, perhaps I can ask the Heaven-Earth Saints for guidance. Unlike the immortal ancestors, who directly received a divine gift from the supreme God of man, the Heaven-Earth Saint realm is a realm reached by self-cultivation. They should have some experience in occupying the past. However, how to make the Heaven-Earth Saint realm experts accept him was another problem. After all, he did not have much interaction with the Heaven-Earth Saints before this. Wait, at this moment, Kui Heng's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He looked at the Gate Master Immortal Emperor who was imprisoned by the immortal binding rope and smiled. It shouldn't be bad to use you as a reward. What? The Gate Master Immortal Emperor felt his blood run cold from Kui Heng's gaze, and an ominous feeling surged in his heart. Don't panic. It's just making the best use of things. Kui Heng smiled and said, in any case, you're not even afraid of me killing you. Why would you care if I give you away as a reward? Can't the immortal ancestors just go and fish you out after they come out of seclusion? You. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor was furious, but he could not say a word. Since he had made his decision, Kui Heng put the Gate Master Immortal Emperor into his sleeve and left the primordial world. At this moment, he had already completed a comprehensive exploration of the primordial world for the present. He planned to wait until he broke through to the late-stage return to Void Realm before exploring the past to prevent himself from encountering the past immortal ancestors when exploring. According to the information left behind by Venerable Master Ju, Kui Heng arrived at an unfamiliar universe and quickly found the palace where Venerable Master Ju was. Jin Hong sensed that someone had arrived and immediately went out to welcome him. He cupped his hands and said, "May I ask who it is?" Kui Heng. Kui Heng smiled and said, "Wei Ju should have told you about me. So it's Immortal Master Kui. Please come in." Jin Hong immediately stepped forward and invited him. "Master told me about you. She said that even among the immortal emperors, you're definitely an expert." Clearly, Venerable Master Ju's understanding of Kui Heng was still in the past. "Haha, isn't he here?" Kui Heng asked with a smile. "Master is not around." Jin Hong shook her head and said, "The Chaos Heaven Assembly has held an expanded meeting for 1,000 years. They will cut off all contact with the outside world. This meeting is a little special. All the existences of the Heaven-Earth Saint realm and the Taisu realm have to participate. As a cabinet member of the Chaos Heaven Assembly, Master was also invited to participate in the meeting. The Heaven-Earth Saints also participated in the meeting. It's also for 1,000 years. Kui Heng frowned when he heard this. The primordial world and the Chaos Heaven held a meeting at the same time. Both of them involved immortal ancestor-level figures. Even the duration was the same. This was too much of a coincidence. "731 Going Back in Time, Spacetime Dao Mark." 731 Going Back in Time, Spacetime Dao Mark. Previously, when Kui Heng learned that the immortal ancestors of the primordial world was in a closed meeting, he felt a little strange. He had investigated the past experiences of the various immortal kings, quasi-immortal emperors, and the Gate Master Immortal Emperors in the primordial world. He knew that this meeting was very sudden and there was almost no formal notice. Before this meeting, there had never been such a sudden meeting. This sudden and unprecedented meeting meant that the topic was extraordinary. It was completely isolated and lasted for 1,000 years, making people feel that the meeting was not simple. He did not expect that there would be an almost identical meeting in the Endless Chaos Sea. However, the realms of the participants were slightly lower than in the primordial world. A member of the Chaos Heaven Assembly like Venerable Master Ju also had to participate in the meeting, but his cultivation was only equivalent to an invincible immortal king. He was not even a quasi-immortal emperor. In the primordial world, he was not qualified to enter the ninth heaven. "Do you know what the theme of this meeting is?" Kui Heng asked Jin Hong. Jin Hong shook his head and said, "I don't know, but to be able to let so many big shots participate, it must be a major event that can affect the endless chaos sea. Kui Heng sighed softly and fell silent, not continuing to ask. Jin Hong's cultivation realm was too low, only equivalent to the level of an ancient king or immortal monarch. It was normal for him not to know about high-level things. Could it be that an expert at the Heaven-Earth Saint realm really died, causing the rules of the entire endless chaos sea to weaken? Kui Heng guessed in his heart, the Ninth Heaven meeting is discussing how to take this opportunity to attack, while the Chaos Heaven meeting is to discuss how to resist. But if that's the reason, there's no need to cut off the connection between the meeting and the outside world, nor is there a need for it to continue for more than 1,000 years. There must be another reason for the top experts of both sides to enter this meeting at the same time. It's not that simple. Next, he left the palace where Venerable Master Ju lived. At the same time, he sent out more fake selves to continue exploring the immeasurable universe of the Chaos Sea. Although he had already investigated the immeasurable universe of the Chaos Sea earlier, he had yet to complete his investigation. There was still a large amount of unknown information. Kui Heng had already reached the peak of the mid-stage return to Void Realm. Before he successfully spread his existence to the time periods where he did not exist, his cultivation could not improve. However, he could use this method of exploring unknown information to increase his accumulation in the direction of all-knowing. When he broke through in the future, he could directly transform this part of his exploration into cultivation. Moreover, this process of exploring the unknown was actually Kui Heng's process of finding inspiration for his next cultivation path. After all, he could not contact existences of the Heaven-Earth Saint realm now, so he had no way to ask for guidance. He could only explore this path himself. There was a boundless universe in the endless chaos sea, and there were countless civilizations in every universe. Although they were inferior to the primordial world in terms of size and level, their diversity far exceeded the primordial world. While exploring the endless chaos sea, one could witness the development of many civilizations and even different forms of life. This could better provide him with inspiration to explore his future cultivation path. However, other than exploring the subsequent cultivation paths, Kui Heng still had something to deal with. He looked at the Gate Master Immortal Emperor behind him and said indifferently, "I originally wanted to give you to the Heaven-Earth Saint realm experts of the Endless Chaos Sea, but they're not around now. What should I do with you? Do you treat me as an object?" The Gate Master Immortal Emperor was furious. He felt that he had suffered a great humiliation and hated Kui Heng to the core. What clear hatred! Kui Heng shook his head and sighed. "I originally wanted to keep you by my side as a servant, but now it seems that it's still too troublesome. You finally want to kill me?" The Gate Master Immortal Emperor sneered. "Just attack. If you want to kill or torture me, do as you please. I'll kill you, but not now." Kui Heng smiled and said, "In order to avoid some unnecessary trouble, go back and continue guarding the gate." As he spoke, the immortal binding rope was untied, and the space-time of the past was changed. Kui Heng, who was originally planning to head to the primordial world to explore, suddenly had a change in expression. At the same time, he raised his right hand and patted the sky lightly. At this moment, in the primordial world, Emperor Wu had just brought Yang Qing to the True Water Divine Palace when Emperor Qing came out to welcome him. However, before Emperor Wu could explain his intentions, a slender and white palm suddenly appeared out of thin air above the True Water Divine Palace. The space-time here seemed to have been imprisoned, and no living being could move at all. What is this? The Emperor Wu and Emperor Qing had the same doubts at the same time, but they could not react in time, let alone dodge. They could only watch helplessly as the palm slapped down. As the palm descended, an incomparably terrifying power enveloped Emperor Wu. Then, a ball of light flickered, and Emperor Wu's life force completely disappeared. His body and soul were destroyed, and his true spirit was destroyed. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, a quasi-immortal emperor like Emperor Wu died. Even Yang Qing beside him was destroyed in body and soul, no longer existing. After doing all of this, the palm slowly disappeared, and the terrifying pressure that filled the surroundings disappeared without a trace, as if it had never existed. In front of the True Water Divine Palace, Emperor Wu looked at all of this in shock, and her face revealed an expression of disbelief. She muttered, "What was that just now? Did an immortal emperor attack from afar and kill Emperor Wu?" Although she was a quasi-immortal emperor and had already touched the mysteries of time, she could not see the fluctuations of time at a higher level. Naturally, she couldn't determine which spacetime dimension the attack came from, whether it was the present, the past, or the future. When Master returns, I have to report this matter properly. Emperor Qing thought to herself before hurriedly returning to the True Water Divine Palace. In her opinion, the True Water Divine Palace was an immortal emperor's Dao ground after all. It contained extremely powerful time power and should be very safe. Even if the mysterious immortal emperor attacked again, he should not directly attack the True Water Divine Palace. In a timeline that Emperor Qing did not know, the originally damaged Heavenly Light Treasure Mirror became unharmed. The Gate Master Immortal Emperor, who had already been captured by Kui Hang, disappeared into thin air and returned to the front of the Heaven Gate of the Ninth Heaven. That was because the person who caused the damage to the Heavenly Light Treasure Mirror and resulted in the Gate Master Immortal Emperor leaving his post was Emperor Wu. Now that Emperor Wu had died in front of the True Water Divine Palace, what happened after would naturally not happen again. The past had been modified. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.